There we go.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I think we are ready to go. So Kyle, I'm going to turn it right over to you and we can get started.
Can we give like 30 seconds to just let all these participants enter? I can
Oh,
see the
sure.
number ticking up. Yeah. All right, and just a little reminder, but once we get going here, that we'll try and keep the chat clear of chat. Any questions will be through the Q&A area. The chat is for technical help emergencies, and there is a presentation later in the day where the chat will be in use, but it's really nice to see everybody. I love all the good mornings, but we'll keep that clear for now, if that's okay. All right, Jackie, yeah, you can start anytime.
All right, Kyle, it's over to you.
Well, good morning, everybody. As we enter, still waiting for a few people to enter in, we'll start our meeting today. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2022 annual general meeting for the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics. Conveniently and strategically planned on May the 4th, which we all know as a special meeting to any Star Wars fans out there. You'll see me make reference a little bit later to that, but in any event, welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking the time today to join us. I would like to start out our day with a land acknowledgement before we get right into the agenda for the day.
Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. Some folks are having trouble hearing, so you might want to, everybody on the panel, if you can make sure your volume is turned right up, and hopefully at the receiving end, everybody's volume is also turned right up. So I'd like to just begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 4 territory, and that the city of Regina is located on Treaty 4 as the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories, and we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. All right, so just in terms of today's process, this is a quick overview of our agenda. We will have some greetings from the province in just a moment, move into a short college update, and then an open forum where you have an opportunity to ask any questions and we'll do our best to answer. We have worked in a little bit of a break, and then we'll move into the business portion of the meeting. So without further ado, I will continue on. As Colette mentioned, we're in the listen and view mode right now until we reach the Q&A portion of the meeting. And the Q&A, you can ask any questions in that function, using that function, and Colette will read them out loud, and then she'll direct them to whomever is best suited to answer the question. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just play greetings from the province. So hang on a second, here we go. Cal, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see this?
On behalf of Health Minister Paul Merriman, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I know that you have a full agenda, and therefore I appreciate your time. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your hard work and dedication, particularly over the past 2 years. We know that it has not been easy for frontline providers. COVID has put additional strain on our healthcare system. Throughout this time, you have continued to provide high-quality care and compassion for patients. We appreciate your resilience and willingness to change and adapt in an ever-changing environment. Paramedics have been a valuable asset in the healthcare system's response to the pandemic by providing supports within communities, transferring patients between facilities, and assisting with testing and vaccines across the province. We thank the college for its work with the Ministry of Health and the Saskatchewan Health Authority so that we could collectively respond to the evolving nature of the pandemic. The issuing of emergency licenses, reinstatement of providers, and scope of practice changes have all helped to ensure that patients and the public continue to receive the best care possible during these unprecedented times. We also appreciate that despite the continued challenges and different waves of the pandemic, the college has continued to advance its research and innovation mandate. I'd specifically note the launch of its virtual technology project to assess paramedic occupational competencies, continuing to provide national exams virtually, including the launch of a national EMR exam, and the enhancements of its internal policies to support the evolution of the pandemic and college. Our government is also investing more funding to support the healthcare system. In March, we announced a Ministry of Health budget of $6.44 billion, which represents the largest health investment in Saskatchewan history. This includes substantial funding for acute and emergency care in urban, rural, and northern communities, mental health and addictions, cancer treatments and programs, and key provincial infrastructure investments. This budget will establish a new agency dedicated to the recruitment and retention of health human resources. Key for you folks is a nearly $11 million increase to support stabilization of emergency medical services. This funding will support additional staffing in 27 rural communities across the province, additional funding to support the training and staffing for community paramedicine in a number of rural and northern communities, market supplement funding for paramedics working for contracted EMS operators, and additional funding to enhance the medical first responder program. These investments will help improve the response times in urban, rural, and remote communities across the province and begin to help address the gaps with our rural and remote communities, and we know that there's more work to do. As Minister of Rural and Remote Health, I know that while our population is widely distributed, it's also connected by a strong sense of community. I've heard from community members and others about the importance of emergency services provided by professionals in both emergency medical services and the larger healthcare system. I understand that the theme of the annual general meeting is do great things, and it focuses on ways to not only find inner strength and motivation, but also leverage support from those around us. And let me say, you are all doing great things. There has undoubtedly been a strain on all of our healthcare providers' mental health and well-being over the past 2 years, and paramedics are no exception. It is important to remember that we need to take care of ourselves and each other to ensure that we all stay healthy. Thank you again for your commitment and dedication to the emergency care needs of Saskatchewan people. Be well and enjoy the rest of your annual general meeting.
Okay. All right. So Kyle, I'll turn it over to you next for your address.
Thank you, Jackie. Can you hear me okay? All good? Perfect. Well, welcome again, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. I certainly had a difficult time determining what to say this year and what might be a meaningful message or a valuable one to everyone living through the past 2 years. Not a fan of continually being reminded about what we've gone through in the last 2 years, but certainly a reality we live in and in front of mind. The past 2 years of challenge that no one could have predicted. The sacrifices, the stresses, endless uncertainty, periods of even illness and isolation for ourselves, our peers, our family members. There's definitely no shortage of emotion. Some would even say a roller coaster. Some would even say a roller coaster that has gone off the rails at times. But here we are 2 years later, and there has been some good that has occurred, often overshadowed, but always there for discovery if we look hard enough. We've appreciated what we quickly lost early on, the social life, our family time, vacation time, and now know what not to take for granted and perhaps what to focus on more. We focus more on health and safety in the profession, and will continue to do that moving forward. The changes that we've made in our profession and our practice will make us safer. We prioritize health and wellness in our personal lives, work-life balance, family time, even more time with the family dog or cat or hamster, whatever you might find comfort in. And some people even found a reason not to hug and handshake anymore. Perhaps they won't continue that go forward, because who doesn't love a handshake or a hug from a loved one? In any event, what I've come up with is simply something you should never get tired of hearing. And that simply is thank you. These are not only words, they're the simplest sign of appreciation. They're free, they cost nothing, and we will never run out of them. Words you've heard many times in the past 2 years and will continue to hear, and all well-deserved. From the anxious, short of breath COVID-19 patient, to the unconscious, to even the upset overdose patient, while maybe not in the immediate moment, is still thankful you did come to them when called for help. I am proud of the work that I do and what I have been able to contribute to the profession. I am proud of the work that you all do and what you have contributed to the profession. I'm proud to support and work alongside some incredible peer professionals. Little Moose Jaw shout out to anyone that's attending. I'm equally as proud to have served the college over the past few years as president and many years beyond in any way that I possibly could, and encourage anyone else in the future to contribute their time and volunteer with the college. I know it feels overwhelming and daunting some days, and it can be. I do understand. Your work is not unnoticed. It's not unappreciated. Though hard to believe that at times, it truly is appreciated. I offer the reminder that we all can do hard things. We're doing them right now. And while we still have some work to do, we will see ourselves through the other end of this. Be proud of the work you do and the difference you make, and let no one ever tell you different. Stay safe, take care, and I look forward to a great day. Jackie.
Thanks very much, Kyle. I'm going to move right into the college update. First, I'd like to just say a thank you to Peter Scolar, our professional photographer who judged the entries into the photography competition. And Peter made a comment about the photos that won. He said that the astonishing courage and commitment shown in these images is comforting and inspiring. And these images just show a sliver of the thousands of brave men and women holding their lives in their hands with their commitment to the life-saving professions. He thanks us for the honor and congratulates all the photographers. So I'm going to move into the next piece, which is our college update. And as is very familiar to you all, our primary objective is to protect and serve the public interest through regulatory oversight, as well as building a profession or collaboratively building a profession that's engaged as a system partner. So everything we do is public leaning, but that doesn't mean we can't and don't lean in your direction. In these last 2 years, they've been beyond challenging, but have created opportunities for us to extend our work into areas that benefit both the profession and the patient. We've created a number of very key partnerships towards patient-centric care. Much of this work was accomplished through new and enhanced partnerships that I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. 2021. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is just acknowledge that Philip Robinson is an ACP grad from Saskatchewan, and he scored a 795 out of 800, which is remarkable performance on the COPR exam, and he won the national award so for the COPR exam for last year. So congratulations to you, Philip. We're extraordinarily proud of you. Your academics are stellar, and I'm sure your practice is equally as good. So what did we do with our time this year? Well, finances were always front and center. Our balanced budget was in place, and we had an unexpected surplus. That surplus was due to, in large part, increased Alberta registrants. We had a number of exam registrants that registered for the national exam in our province, and then labor mobility back to Alberta. We also had some late fees, for those of you who haven't paid them, they're going to be here waiting for you at the next renewal. So we decided it probably wasn't helpful for us to chase you down, that you were aware that these fees were there. And so they'll be here for you. Last year we had almost no travel. And so we reduced our expenses, office expenses and travel expenses, of course. We realigned our staff in the fall and we reduced by a half full-time equivalent. Because to the largest part, we're not open to the public except by appointment. So it helped us reduce some costs. We've also hosted all of our meetings virtually, and that has saved tens of thousands of dollars. And then we're looking for grants. The college has really been able to secure a number of really strong grants that help us do the work of the college without having to tap into college revenues driven by member fees. In terms of human resources, we recruited 3 contract investigators, and that has been extraordinarily helpful given the large number and large volume of complaints that had come in last year. And we hired a permanent part-time bookkeeping resource, which is, again, a part of our succession planning, part of our risk management approach, and an asset that I can't speak more highly of. In terms of operational efficiency, we moved to a cloud-based server, and that happened late in 2021, early 2022. And this was a risk management requirement. We needed to get off of a fixed piece of equipment and into the cloud. So we did that. We've also done system and website enhancements, as well as continued our office operations in a hybrid environment. As I alluded to, last year we had 41 PCC complaints that were received and managed by Jody Edgeborn and Jen Williams. 11 of those files were closed in 2021 by consensual resolution. So thank you to all of the individuals involved, including the members who worked with the college to reach some consensus on a good resolution. It's helpful just to remind everybody that our PCC process is not intended to be punitive. It is intended to change behavior and practice and increase awareness. So where we can get resolution by consent, it's helpful for everybody. And as I mentioned, all of our council and committee meetings were held in a virtual environment, and we continue to have a hybrid discipline hearing policy in place so that we can offer both virtual as a default and then in person if need be. In terms of knowledge translation, we continued to work with the CSA and Equal Canada on standards development, and we participated in multiple publications and presentations on behalf of the college this year. We worked with COPPER to launch the EMR's national exam with virtual proctoring. So during the last part of the year, we launched the first EMR exam. And we established regulatory assessment standards for the college, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Our partnerships are growing, and the University of Regina and Sask Polytechnic are key research partners. Sask Poly is a crucial participant in our quality assurance work related to the VAPOC project, and the U of R is a strong research partner and mentor to the college. And of course, our technology partner, Luxonic, who are dynamic players in this arena and genuinely good community members. So I can't say enough about their character and the way they do business, and we thank them for their ongoing participation in our project and partnership with us. In terms of membership numbers, our numbers have shifted a little bit. We saw 34 CCPs this year versus 36 of last year. Our ACPs went up to 391. We saw a slight drop in ICPs. Our PCPs were pretty much stable. EMRs saw a slight decrease, and that could have been a shift to the PCP license level. And then the community paramedics were increased, which is always good for everybody. We saw a slight increase in non-practicing members to 227 over 215 the year before. So in general, our membership numbers remain stable. They seem to have plateaued, and that's good. That's good for us. We'd like to see more, of course, but it's good that we're not losing dramatically. Labor mobility applicants, we saw 149 labor mobility applicants at the end of December. The majority of these are coming from Alberta and Manitoba. We are all scrambling to recruit individuals from a very limited pool nationally. So where you can create competitive edge, it's good for the province, it's good for your services. I mentioned briefly the regulatory standards, and this is really important for the college because we need to take the time to ensure that our regulatory performance and our accountability and transparency are where they should be. So we developed some regulatory standards that are going to guide our strategy development and our planning for the organization. And what we expect to see is a better return on investment and strong data to support the effort we're undertaking. It'll provide greater transparency and accountability around the funding that we receive and an emphasis on quality as opposed to quantity. So will it be better? Well, we think that improved monitoring is going to allow us to make more responsive decisions in terms of what the college undertakes. So regulatory performance standards are actually fairly new to the regulatory industry in Canada. They have been in the UK for a number of years, and it really is, it is the direction that most regulators are going in. This will help us measure how SCoP accounts for its fiduciary responsibilities. And basically what it is the standards consist of 17 standards in 8 domains. And so I've listed the 8 domains there. They're the ones that you would expect: governance, regulatory activity, system partners, innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And so our next steps now are really to, start developing indicators and then start collecting data. And that'll happen over the coming year. We may reach out to some of you to assist with that. And once it's available, we're going to start publishing that data annually along with our annual report. So the next piece, before I before I turn the floor over to the VAPOC team, I'd just like to say a quick thank you to council and my team and to all of you as members. I don't need to belabor the fact that the year was challenging, but the strength of each individual combined led us to a very successful year. As we enter into the next phase of the pandemic, I'm hopeful that we can continue to work collaboratively to right the ship and see our healthcare system stabilize. Again, I thank Luxonic, U of R, Sask Poly, and the funders for contributing to the effort that we're now going to hear about. So virtual reality, I'm going to turn the floor over to Jennifer and oopsie. Oh, rats. Okay, I need to just pause for a minute. Sorry about this. This is my technical error here. Sorry. Okay. Forgive me here. Okay. All right, here we go. You can't have a session without technical problems. I thought I had inserted these slides yesterday, but clearly not. Okay, slideshow from the beginning. Here we go. Okay. All right, Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jackie. Good morning, everyone. I am happy to use this little brief segment of time to provide just a brief overview of our virtual reality or VR project. This is our virtual assessment of paramedic occupational competency, or as we refer to it as our VAPOC project. So change the slides, Jackie, please. So this project was made possible by a substantial grant from Employment and Social Development Canada. This has provided the full funding for this project, so we were very thankful that that they did award us that money to fund this. The virtual assessment, this is a competency assessment tool for our international paramedic applicants. We're using immersive technology as a surrogate for in-person demonstration of skills and competencies. And we'll create regulatory standards for the use of immersive technology in assessing practitioner competency as well. We've really enhanced some of our partnerships with this project. We're definitely involving many of our paramedic regulators from across the country in this project, and educators as well. Jack kind of touched on some of the work we're doing with partnering with SCoP Poly, and I'll touch a little bit more on that as we go through. This project will help reduce some of the cycle time for licensing decisions on our internationally educated paramedics. Right now, the process is that they would have to be in the province or in the country in order for them to complete the skill assessments. With this project, we'll be able to have them complete those skill assessments before they come to Canada, and they'll have a license decision before they even leave. Ultimately, the goal is to increase the number of qualified practitioners in the province by increasing and streamlining the entire process. An added bonus is these tools could also be used to assess our current members on renewal requirements. We have the airway readiness assessment already completed, and it's part of the overall assessment of our applicants. Excuse me, next slide, Jackie, please. Within the funding we received, we were able to develop 3 scenarios, focusing on respiratory, cardiovascular, and immunological disorders. We wanted to be able to have the ability to evaluate the user in their skills, knowledge, and decision-making, but we also ensured inclusion of the NOCP competency areas, specifically 1, 2, and 3. And that allows us to also assess medical legal aspects, verbal, nonverbal communication, team functioning, and health and safety practices, just to ensure that we have a well-rounded evaluation tool. An orientation module and manual will also be developed. We really want to make sure that anyone who's going to be using this assessment tool is comfortable with the technology before they obviously get into the assessment. We do have a research project. This has already begun. The initial data collection of the airway readiness assessment tool has started, and that is with partnership with SCoP Poly. Both their primary care and advanced care paramedic students are helping us gather data on the effectiveness and usability of the VR tool. Further study of our VAPOC project will also follow before the tool is available for international applicant use. Supporting components are focusing on our international educated applicant access, so setting up accounts, development of the orientation manual and module, ongoing maintenance of equipment and records, as well as changes to scenarios in the event of changes to medications or techniques that often happen within the healthcare system. We're also working on ensuring that we have effective policy and strong policy in place regarding record retention of both recordings and assessments, pre and post measures. Will also be in place before widespread uses of this tool. Next slide, Jackie, please. So timeline. Overall, this is about a 2.5-year project. We began in April of last year, so April 2021, and the project will conclude at the end of June 2023. The respiratory assessment module was the first one to be developed, and it will be ready for evaluation and research as of the end of June of this year. We are also targeting the immunological disorders, the module scoping and requirements definition for the end of June of this year as well. The development start and completion development start and completion is possibly within the scope of VAPOC, excuse me, but right now is to be determined just based on the funding that we will have available. The cardiac assessment module is expected to be ready for evaluation and research as of the end of October 2022. We have no intention to begin using the this tool with our international educated applicants until all the respiratory, cardiac, and the orientation modules have been fully evaluated. The modules will be used within SCoP, along with the potential use by educators and other regulators on a module by module basis. And use of those modules in conjunction with our internationally educated applicant assessment will only occur once everything is complete. We want to ensure that we have consistency in our approach before we use this as a full assessment tool. Policy and research activities have begun with completion prior to the project closure and in order to influence the operationalizing of the tool as well. So this includes the full integration of the modules within SCoP processes and accessibility on our caregiver platform, which Luxonic is hosting. And we will definitely be having communication events kind of throughout the timeline to all of our 34 sort of stakeholders that we've identified. SCoP and Luxonic will also be holding a multi-day operational planning session at the end of May of this year, just to ensure that we have to develop our plan and ensure that we are all of our pieces are in place. Next slide, Jackie. So our VAPOC scenarios will cover competencies from these 6 areas of the NOCPs. Areas 7 and 8, which are transportation and health promotion and public safety, respectively, were not included in this project. We definitely wanted to kind of align to the NOCPs. However, we had to ensure that what we were assessing appropriately as well. Some areas or some competencies do not sort of they're not effectively evaluated in a VR environment, and we wanted to make sure that if we were only able to creating sort of 3 scenarios, that we were kind of getting the biggest bang for the buck. Part of that work was to determine which NOCPs were appropriate for this method of evaluation, which is VR. And we also wanted to ensure that any sort of, I guess, critical NOCPs were included. And that's kind of where some of the decision making for the respiratory, cardiac, and immunological disorders were based on. So, for example, in area 1, which is professional responsibilities, there are 24 subcompetencies altogether. However, only 10 are items that we felt were appropriate for the VR environment or that we wanted to assess. Some of those that were not evaluated were things such as make a presentation. Obviously, that wasn't an NOCP that we felt would be have merit in creating a VR scenario around. Next slide, please. So we're going to move into a demo. So I'll turn it over in just a moment. It's about 10 minutes long. Due to this being an assessment in nature, we're not going to be demonstrating a full module or submodule in its entirety. This is just a demonstration of some of the skills that have been developed already. Our scenarios are also developed with the ability to have a user to do things incorrectly. This is meant to be an evaluation of a paramedic's knowledge and skills, and they should be able to do things wrong if they so choose, or if that's the way the scenario is going. So if you see anything being done kind of incorrectly, or that's not, within the normal process of what we would expect, just remember that it's our developers performing the skills here, and this is just meant to be a demonstration and to highlight some of the work that's been done so far. So I'm going to turn it over to Arjun, I believe, who will go through the demo for us.
Okay, Arjun, you can just tell me when it's okay to start.
Yep, Jackie, feel free to start here.
Hello, We have a 25-year-old female who is experiencing shortness of breath at the local school. Can you please respond?
Hello, my name is Jacob, and I am an emergency medical responder. Can you tell me more about what happened here today?
So at this point, you see one of our developers taking the front clip of the SpO2 monitor and attaching it to the patient.
The blood relative to the amount of hemoglobin not carrying oxygen.
The applicant is also able to dictate their findings and their impressions into the application itself. Here they are starting an IV. And please do note that although there is a little bit of blurriness in the video right now, only because of the fact that we're streaming this, in reality, this is a crystal clear viewing experience when you have the VR headset on. While these activities are being carried out, the application is monitoring what has been completed and the order of everything that's being completed as well. that's a quick preview. Back over to you, Jackie or Jen.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself and realizing that nobody can hear me. Okay, so at this point, we're happy to engage in any questions you might have. Colette will monitor the Q&A if you have any questions about the project or about the college itself or anything you may have concerns about. Please feel free to ask.
Yeah, and just make sure you put them in the Q&A area and then I'll read them out.
Perfect. Any questions? I can't see anything here.
Yeah, not yet, but might take people a minute or two to type them out. Okay, so Peter Tibbetts is asking, will this be available for skill competency checks going forward once the program is up and running for all levels?
I think that the quick answer is that is our goal. We need to make sure that that it's ready to go. But yeah, we felt that especially people in rural and remote might have challenges getting into ORs for OR time to demonstrate competencies every couple of years. So yeah, the goal is to get to that point for sure.
And this Q&A time can be about anything. It doesn't have to be just about the VAPOC project. So yeah, we'll give you, a few minutes to ask us whatever you like.
And now we have awkward silence. I will say that the project team on the VAPOC side has been going 100% on this project. So I can't understate the amount of detail. If anybody's curious about that, we'd be happy to share the project charter with you at some point.
All right, so we have a question from Andrew Taylor. They're asking, in regards to complaint resolution agreements, our rules on the website state that they will be posted, but no identifiers will be posted. I've noticed that the agreements posted today have names attached. Is a resolution supposed to be not punitive?
Jen, do you want to speak to why we post some of the CCRAs?
Almost all of the CCRAs are posted, and the name of the member is kept open. We will typically try to keep the identity of the complainant. Typically, we'll redact that type of information, but the member's name will remain within the CCRA. Some CCRAs, if they relate to mental health or drug and alcohol or substance abuse, those are typically the ones that we do not post, and everything else is posted.
I think I'll just mention also, thanks, Jen, that not being punitive doesn't mean necessarily that we don't want to ensure there's some accountability. So when individuals acknowledge that they've made a mistake, I think it's a good thing to encourage people to say, I made a mistake, but I've learned from it and I'm going to move forward. So we need to be transparent to the public. We're not trying to beat up the member in any way, but there is an accountability that comes with being in that kind of situation. So we don't want to eliminate that accountability. Thank you for the question.
All right, Kathy C is just making a comment about the VAPOC video. This is awesome. You may make a gamer out of me yet. So thanks, Kathy. All right, John Crocker is asking, how are other agencies doing with supply chain issues?
I'm not sure how to answer. I don't know if that's a question for me, or Kyle, can you assist with that?
I can make an attempt. While not directly related to what the college would have any authority or accountability over, we do know there are challenges, and we know that a number of distributors, manufacturers continue to try to keep up with the demand. But that is such a domino effect throughout the entire system, not just medically related, but anything from vehicles to groceries on the shelf. So, you know, I do know that within the province, the SHA and the ministry have worked hard to help agencies collaborate in purchasing, providing PPE throughout the entire pandemic. The SHA and ministry have been extremely helpful in protecting the paramedics and other professionals as well. So I think everything that can be done is being done. There's just a tremendous pressure on the system with the number of COVID cases that are currently experienced and admissions and such. You know, paramedics, if they feel that they're not or do not have what they need, to simply raise that within your environments that you work in. And I know the SHA will continue to respond as best they can in these situations. Beyond that, you know, your workplace requires, or you as a worker need to feel safe. And if you're not, or you don't feel you have what you need, please raise that concern within your organization.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, next question's from Colby Borwell. There doesn't appear to be a college policy speaking directly to the process regarding posting and distribution of CCRAs. Is this something the college will undertake from an accountability and data governance perspective? It's for Jackie.
Sure, and I think that's actually a really good suggestion. So I'll add that to my personal to-do list to make sure that it's well understood. Now, I do think that yeah, I do think that we verbally try and communicate that, but obviously we do need a policy. So thank you, Colby, sorry. We will absolutely undertake that this year.
All right, thanks, Jackie. Next question, and if there's more questions coming, everyone, yeah, get them typed up. So we've got a question from Don Grant. I hear that ePCRs are going to be mandatory. Is there a date for this to happen?
That is news to me. Kyle, do you know anything about that?
Well, I think it's not my place to speak to this. Certainly has been a priority of the government and the stakeholders to move towards this for a number of years. And, you know, like everything else, COVID has impacted the project on that. I think, again, reach out to your service organizations or SHA directors in relation to kind of what that rollout might look like in the next couple of years. Again, not within our realm of responsibility. We would certainly support it, as documentation in our profession is extremely important for accuracy and data and statistics. The college, you know, would love to see that move forward, and do believe it will in the future, just not within our realm of responsibility. That's the political way of answering that. Sorry, just not within our realm to answer. Sorry.
Thanks, Kyle.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. So if there's more questions coming, I definitely encourage folks to let us know. Oh, and okay, there's one here in the chat. So Rod McKenzie is just adding to that. The Ministry of Health announced funding for the ePCR in the 2022-23 budget and will be leading this work, and it will begin shortly.
Excellent. Thanks, Rod.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the comments there.
Yeah. Okay. I think if we have no further questions, doesn't mean you can't ask them. Certainly shoot it.
Jackie,
Yeah,
I have a question.
no.
Oh, come on. What's a Jedi's favorite toy?
Oh, no. What is it?
It's a Yoda.
Oh, God,
Yo-
Kyle. May the force be
Ah.
with you, Kyle.
Okay.
Well
I
done.
have more, but
Yeah,
that one
yeah.
didn't go well.
Okay, we're moving on, Kyle. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Feel free to reach out by email or phone. Happy to answer your questions. Even if I don't know the answer, we will try and find out for you. And your suggestions are good suggestions. And so feel free to share. So at this point, I'm going to actually invite you to take a break. Just a second here. There we go. I'm going to invite you to take a little break. We'll take 15 minutes and we'll rejoin at 7 minutes after. Well, we can make it 10 minutes after 10. And then we'll get into the business portion of our meeting. So take 15 minutes. Okay, Kyle, I'm hoping you're there. Excellent. So thanks for coming back, I'm hoping. We are going to move into the business portion of our meeting. So I will turn it over to Kyle, please, to begin the business portion of the meeting.
Great. I can start off with another joke. No, I won't. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 10:07.
Okay.
And we'll start with the approval for the 2021 AGM minutes, which were circulated by email previously.
And I do have them up as well, although you'll have to zoom in if you want to see this. Okay.
So we'll give it, just give it 30 seconds or so here. If somebody needs to type something in to make an amendment. And then I guess a mover at some point. Colette, are you taking control of that for voting? And
I'll be doing the voting. Louise is taking the minutes for the meeting. Yeah, and yeah.
Okay.
And if there's more questions that come through, how do we want to handle that, Jackie?
If there are questions that come through about or just general questions, I'll try and answer them as we go. I'll try and keep an eye. That one question that just came in about the liability insurance, I'll answer in a couple of minutes. Okay.
I think we'll need a mover for the minutes, correct?
Yes. So if somebody could type into the Q&A that they move, and a seconder as well.
We have Carrie Evanson Carlton moving and Connie Wilson can second it. And we call it if you want to send out the vote.
Oops.
All right. I'm just going to launch this poll then. And
You
I
should see the poll.
Yeah.
Can you see the poll?
I can see the poll.
Okay. Okay.
We'll just let everyone vote.
Okay. I think we've got, oh, here we go. Go ahead, Colette.
We have,
all right. And so that's been 1 minute. So we'll end that poll. The minutes have been passed.
Excellent. Thank you.
perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you. We'll move into just an introduction of our parliamentarian. I'd like to introduce our parliamentarian for the day, Marilee Rasmussen, to say a few words about process and her role. So if Marilee can unmute and give us the ground rules for the day.
I think I've managed to unmute. And welcome to everybody. I'm very pleased to be able to be a part of this meeting. I'm a lawyer in Saskatchewan and I've worked with the College of Paramedics for a very long time now. I don't like counting up the number of years in these situations, but I'm very happy to be here to assist as your parliamentarian. And the role of a parliamentarian is fairly straightforward. It is just to assist the chair in conducting the meeting and to provide advice with respect to procedural issues that if any of those kinds of issues should arise. But you know, as with any legal capacity, my role is to provide advice, and the chair is the one who has the authority to make the ruling, and, you know, on the basis of that advice or as the chair sees fit. So I hope that everything will go smoothly, and if not, I'll just ask the chair to just indicate if there's any assistance required, any advice required, and we can pause while that happens if it becomes necessary. I hope that's all clear, and let's go ahead with the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Marilee. Okay, so moving into the resolutions. This first resolution is really a housekeeping issue. I'll read it out for you. Section 15 of the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics Administrative Bylaws describes the election of council. And section 15.1.4 describes eligible members using specific nomenclature. And then whereas the nomenclature used in section 15 is outdated and limiting, be it resolved that section 15 of the administrative bylaws be amended to reflect a generic description of eligible members as follows. 15.1.4, 3 members at large nominated from the members registered with the college at any license level. And so this resolution is being presented by the college. And this slide just shows you the current provision. It talks about 3 members at large nominated from the EMTs and EMR license levels. So the official resolution is here. Please remember that you have to be an active member in order to vote. So Kyle, I'm sorry, I guess you can call the vote using the polling.
Yep. There's already a mover and it's been seconded already, correct?
Okay, great.
I just wanted to interject for one moment, just to remind everybody that under the Act, it's required that 2/3 of those who vote support the motion in order for it to be approved.
Thank you. And so I do need a.
Right, so if you're ready for a vote, I
think we need somebody to move the resolution, right?
I think, well.
Yes, that's correct. Somebody needs to move and second the resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a couple in the chat and the Q&A.
And if everybody can just stick to the Q&A area so that it's hard to look at both screens. We'll just keep everything in Q&A. Chat is for technical problems and panicking. The Q&A is for all of our business.
Okay. We have Donna Domes, who has move as presented. And we have a few other movers, but I think, can we accept that as a second?
Tim has seconded it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so we'll do
So
Tim Hillier is seconded. Yeah.
If you want to open the vote.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll give everybody 1 minute for all the votes. So I will launch that now.
You know how many jokes I can say in a minute? Should have had some Jeopardy music in the background.
All right. Yeah, so that resolution has passed.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so the second resolution is with respect to the initial application fee. So the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics established a $50 administration fee, an application fee for initial applicants. Costs associated with the evaluation of the applications have increased since 2008. And so be it resolved that the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics adjust the initial application fee to $100. This resolution is submitted by the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics. This is the current language. And so Kyle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. In the Q&A, I'll need a mover and a shaker. If you just want to type in your responses in the Q&A only, and we will record those individuals. We have Destin Ash will move, and Robert Furland will second. Call it. You can open up the voting for us, please, and we will take a vote.
Did we lose the poll? Can you still see the poll?
Once you vote on it, it disappears. So it was there. So
Okay.
just assuming a few more seconds.
All right, that is a minute. And so, yeah, that resolution has passed.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and the third resolution is clarification of intent regarding voting. So whereas section 21.6 of the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics Administrative Bylaws describes the process for submission of resolutions at the annual general meeting, and subsection 21.6.2 requires that all resolutions are reviewed by Legislation and Bylaws Committee prior to being proposed at the annual general meeting. Be it resolved that section 21.6 of the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics Administrative Bylaws be amended as follows. A resolution to amend the bylaws may be proposed by a member in good standing to the annual general meeting for consideration and vote at the next annual general meeting or a special meeting called by council. And this resolution is submitted by the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics. This resolution is being submitted just as clarification. So our bylaws are pretty clear that all resolutions need to be reviewed by Legend Bylaws, but typically we have permitted folks to bring forward resolutions from the floor. And this is just to ensure that the Legend Bylaws Committee has an opportunity to review submissions and ensure that that they're given due process before they actually come to the members for a vote. So that's the reasoning behind this. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer that. Otherwise, we can move to vote.
If anyone has any questions, please put it in the Q&A. If not, we'll give it a few seconds for a mover and a shaker.
I think Brian Adams has made the motion. And
The next one was Peter Tibbetts. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
okay.
Don't see any questions on the resolution, so call it if you would be so kind.
I know.
All right, and that has been a minute, and that was the third resolution has also passed.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
So,
back to you, Jackie.
okay, so this is being brought forward as an information item for you. Mandatory liability insurance, as you will recall, if you've been here with us a while, we've been talking about this since 2018. And we're at a point now where it's important that we actually propose this amendment. It won't be voted on today. This is information for you today, and this is the notice that you require in order to vote on it at the next AGM. Or if we need it sooner, we'll call a special meeting. Basically, the Paramedics Act provides for the authority for the introduction of a bylaw specific to mandatory liability insurance. And our Legislation and Bylaws Committee is proposing that the college approve mandatory insurance coverage for members. The rationale is fairly straightforward. Members and stakeholders inquire about insurance on a regular basis, and really it's become a topic of importance and interest due in part to the rise in cases relating to liability against a practitioner, but also to professional misconduct in other parts of the country. Mandatory liability insurance is intended to protect paramedics against claims of professional malpractice by covering the costs of a legal settlement and malpractice from a third party. It's also intended to compensate for losses and damages suffered by patients due to some failure on the part of the practitioner. And it'll also ensure that there's financial protection to cover costs or damages that may be awarded against the member and by extension to the college in court. So the college has determined that members will be able to obtain insurance from their employer, their National Professional Association, or from an independent company or broker. The college isn't at this point even considering attaching it to your licensing for a number of reasons, not the least of which, when we surveyed folks in 2018, there was significant interest in having individuals choose their own coverage. And so we think it's probably most appropriate if you do so. Workplace, there's a question from Rob in the Q&A. Workplace liability insurance is required. Workplace liability insurance may or may not cover you. And so what the college is prepared to do is to go forward and introduce the requirements and the standards and tell you what the coverage requirements are. And then you can check with your workplace to see if your coverage is sufficient. The challenge in workplace is, in workplace insurance, is that it may not cover you when you're not working. And it may not cover you if you're deemed to be offside of your scope of practice or your conduct. So it's a good question, Rob, and definitely worth asking once we start releasing more information about what those standards will look like. So I think that's it. So this is really just information for you. If you have additional questions, feel free to shoot them my way and I'll do my best to answer them. But more information will be coming. The implementation of the mandatory insurance will happen with the 2023 renewal. So for 2024. So by fall next year, you need to have some insurance in place for sure. And so we're giving you a heads up now. And if you have any questions, again, just feel free to reach out. Okay. So the next slide, we're going to talk about election results. And Kyle, I'm going to turn it to you.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm pleased to announce the results of our election, as you do see on the screen. Congratulations to Noelle Dunn, as she will move into the Vice President role, Donna Domes as a member of large, and Michael Slater as a member of large as well. So congratulations to these three individuals. Congratulations to everyone that put their name forward, showed an interest of participating on the college. We've often said well, it's very true. We could not do what we're doing without the volunteers that come forward, contribute generously their time, experiences, and ideas. So our success as a college is based on your contributions. So those of you who did express an interest in committee work will be notified following the June council meeting of those appointments. And again, thank you for taking the time to vote, and appreciate all those who have served before you as well.
Okay.
So on the screen, you will see your council for the College of Paramedics for the 2021 term. Matt McGurk as president, Noelle Dunn as vice president, myself as president, William Bream, member at large, Donna Domes, member at large, Jason Fargo, member at large, also our fire representative, Karen Gibbons, our public representative, Joel Gutzfeld, public representative, Michael Slater, member at large, and a public representative to still be determined, but we will keep Olu Ateneju, who has been with us for many years and who has tried to escape the grasp of the college, but we continue to value his presence and will stay with us until that appointment is made in the coming years. Maybe never.
He didn't realize he was, yeah, he didn't realize he was a lifer when he came here.
He's not even on here to defend himself.
I know, seriously. Okay.
But thank you. We also would like to say goodbye to Bill Fisher, who moves out of past president role, for all of his time that he has put in with the college, as well as Mike Meyer. Again, your contributions were appreciated over the years, and we wish you well as you step back from college role.
Okay. So I'm just seeing a couple of questions in the chat. Tim, you said that mandatory insurance is a good idea, independent choice is a good idea, but if the college isn't going to include, will they provide guidance or generate partnerships? I just got PAC Marsh renewed, been waiting on replies from them since January. Going to be tough to renew my license when it takes 5 months and 3 applications to get answers. That is a really interesting piece of information. I was not aware. And so, I think we will continue to seek information about insurance coverage. We can't necessarily promote one over another, but we will continue, and we have actually got feelers out right now to determine what levels of coverage people could get for a similar fee to what the PAC program is offering. The PAC program is a very good level of coverage for a very reasonable fee, but I get what you're saying when it says 5 months. So this is good information for us, Tim. We'll have to take it back and see what we can come up with. Kathy also mentioned, could you also do an overview of the mandatory PCR documentation course being launched as a reminder to members? I think that's a really great piece of, that's a great question, Jen. I think you have to answer that. But before you go to that, let me just speak to Jordan's question about liability insurance. Will members be able to use existing coverage for multiple licenses? Yes. We wouldn't require you to have multiple policies. As long as you're covered, you're covered. So Jen, over to you.
Yeah, I think Kathy just kind of wanted a reminder. The education committee is working on the documentation course that we sent out notification on, would have been last October. Documentation, it's not PCR, it's just sort of a documentation course that's required for all members. that will be required for your 2023 renewal this fall. So the work is ongoing. We are going to have it kind of similar in a process to the calcium and TXA education. The link will be posted onto the college website and you'll be able to access it directly, complete the education, and then print off your certificate or save it directly towards your member file. So that's kind of just a brief reminder. More information once we're ready to launch will be sent out to everyone via email.
Thanks very much, Jen. And I will read Dale's comment. I'm not opposed to having discussion about considering the need for mandatory professional liability insurance for our membership. If we go down this path, I believe we need to proceed slowly and not overreach what is required for our membership. I found some of the comments in the Pulse professional liability insurance article a bit concerning. Specifically, professional liability insurance will become mandatory. While Paramedics Act 2 states regulatory bylaws may be made pursuant to Section 14 for the following purposes, prescribing the minimum amount of liability protection, my understanding is that the administration bylaw 7.1.6 states council can recommend to the college membership revisions or amendments to the bylaws. So any changes need to go to the membership. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Dale. And that's why we're bringing it forward today as notice to the membership. It'll get voted on at the next membership, at the next annual general meeting, or if council decides it's more urgent, or if the system decides it's more urgent, then we'll call a special meeting specifically for this, but members will get to vote on it. The one piece that I guess I would emphasize is that paramedics are only one of two professions in this province that do not have liability coverage. And so it speaks to a broader need that has already been determined by other regulators that's important. Leith has added, Leith Saunders is from the Manitoba College, and she's added that Manitoba requires $5 million, but it doesn't specify a mandatory provider. So, so we list several that could provide the liability insurance. So that's really great information, Leith. Thank you. Sorry, Colette, I've taken over your job. I'll just keep going. Okay, Derek. Oh, nice to see your name, Derek. I've had Marsh for 3 years with no issues. I do my PAC membership first through Paramedic Chiefs of Saskatchewan, then the Marsh app. It seems pretty seamless and quick. When I looked at other carriers for contract work, there are only 4 or 5 options for this in Canada that offer things like this. My current premium, I'm guessing, is less than $150 per year and can be used on income tax, which is terrific. Yes. And Dale said, sorry, I was limited in what I could write. Dale, I don't want to let you write anymore. No. Okay, so Dale said, I would suggest that if we go this direction, we begin with minimum requirements, noting some policies offer criminal defense, reimbursement, coroner's inquest appearances, breach of confidentiality, et cetera, et cetera. I'd argue that these are optional requirements, not mandatory. It was stated at the beginning of the meeting to reach resolution by consent and not a punitive process. Also, members have gone through disciplinary process, had to pay fines, yes, and costs associated with it. The disciplinary process with regulatory bodies is an administrative justice process and not intended to be litigious as it has become. Unfortunately, when members engage lawyers, it becomes litigious. So there's not much we can do about that, Dale. Members should assess the level of liability risk associated with their practice and determine if individual, personal, or professional liability insurance is required. So I think that's a great comment, Dale. These are things that are mulling through everybody's minds. You certainly will get an opportunity to vote on it. I do think it places patients at a disadvantage when the practitioner does not have liability coverage, and it places the practitioner at great risk of being sued personally. So yeah, so I think good comments, and I look forward to further discussion at the next AGM on this topic. So, okay.
I think if I can add, Jackie, I think the focus of the college are more around the reasons to move forward with this as opposed to not have it. I think there's a number of values that we've seen in the past with professional liability insurance with employers and a gap with individuals. as a self-regulating body, we hold our license ourselves and we practice beyond the confines of an ambulance or the uniform I wear. So there is a degree of protection to the public to ensure that we are providing the appropriate care and that individuals are protected, patients and providers too. So, you know, lots to discuss go forward without a doubt, and these comments are helpful, and we hope to continue to hear them up until within the vote next year.
Thanks very much, Kyle. So I believe, yes, our next speaker is not on yet. So I have a couple of choices. I can jump on and do my presentation first, if Dan isn't available.
I did email him and ask if he could jump on early, and he said absolutely. So I'll just email again.
Tell him we're ready for him.
Where he's at.
And so Kyle, if you can just ask for a motion to adjourn the formal portion of the meeting, we're just moving.
Oh, here I thought you were going to ask me to say a joke, but okay, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting at 10:38. If someone can put in the Q&A. Brian Adams again.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Brian.
Brian.
And we don't need a seconder for that. And Dan, we're running ahead of schedule. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll stop screen sharing and you can begin. Oh, actually, Kyle's going to introduce you first. Sorry.
Thanks, Jackie. Welcome, Dan. Gives me pleasure to introduce our first speaker today. Dan Fraser is currently an investigator with the College of Paramedics. In 2020, Dan retired from the Calgary Police Service, where he helped to train thousands of officers and partner agencies in the use of force, communications, and crowd management. Things we do on a regular basis. Not the force part, sorry. Dan speaks regularly in Canada and the US on topics of communication and persuasion. He is a verbal judo instructor and is trained in hostage negotiation. His articles have been published in several magazines and journals, and he is a contributing author to the book If I Knew Then, Life Lessons from Cops on the Street. His current book, Kick-Ass Presentations, will be available in March 2020, and we'll give you his email address in the end, and I got to swear on our meeting, so strike that from the minutes. Please join me in welcoming Dan Fraser this evening, or this afternoon, this morning. I can't even get that right. Welcome, Dan. Oh, and I'm not sure.
We can't hear you.
Can everyone
Dan.
hear Dan?
No. Might be your.
How about now?
Yep, you bet.
Yep, there we go. I'm okay. We're batting 1,000 here today. So I logged on just at the right time. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So imagine this, you go to buy something important. You go to buy a fridge or an appliance or even a car, and you walk in and you don't like the salesperson. You know, you're thinking, there's just, I can't put my finger on it, but I just don't like this person. What do? Typically, you don't end up buying anything from them. There's a thing with people that, especially if we're going to be invested with them at all, and this includes interacting with first responders, is that we need people to know us, like us, and trust us. And that's really what we're talking about, because if people know, like, and trust you, they are probably not going to be complaining about you, certainly not at the same rate that they would if they didn't know you, didn't like you, and didn't trust you. So what we're going to talk about for the next little bit is, how do we do that? How do we turn up our likability to be able to get people to know, like, and trust us? How do we do that as first responders? Well, first of all, why would we want to do that? Like, why would we want to even get better at communicating? Throw something in the chat if you like. I know that you guys probably haven't been super active in the chat so far, but I'm hoping that I can see what comes up on the chat here. Why would you want to be a better communicator as a medic? And so far we have nothing. I don't know if everybody's tuned out. They got they're scrolling Facebook. They're on They're playing with their dog. They're doing whatever instead of, oh, here we go. Create trust. Right on, Carla. Yeah. Avoid offending patients. Yeah, exactly, Jackie. There's a bunch of good reasons for it, right? Number one, if we can decrease complaints, that's awesome. That alone would be so good because that is going to lessen the stress that we're going to have overall. I know from the investigations that I've conducted through the college that it's a huge amount of stress on people. Even if you kind of know it's bogus, you know that you did everything everything that you could, and it's going to be super stressful for you. So it's definitely going to lessen stress. It's definitely going to decrease complaints, and ultimately it's going to make you more effective. It's our greatest skill as paramedics. Absolutely. And I have to preface, I'm not a medic, you guys. I've never been a medic, but I was a police officer for over 20 years. And most of that was in patrol. So dealt with paramedics every day. And I think I have, some idea of the type of people that you deal with. So here's the thing with skills, right? We talk about talking to people and communicating. Well, it's the most frequent behavior that you are engaged in as a medic, right? If you're not talking to your partner, you're talking to dispatch, you're talking to the public, you're talking to patients, you're talking to patients' families, you're talking with the staff at the hospital, nurses and whatnot. You're doing a lot of it. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could be even a little bit better at that? And that's what we're going to kind of talk about today, because there's this thing called the OK plateau. And this was introduced to me anyway by a science author named Joshua Foer. And he wrote the book called Moonwalking with Einstein. And what he talks about.
Uh-oh.
And I'll use my my word here. Did you lose my audio again?
No, it's okay. You froze for just a minute. Carry on.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'll try to keep moving so you can tell if and when I'm freezing. So here's the thing. Before you became a medic, you were incompetent at being a medic, right? And then you go through a whole bunch of training, which takes a lot of effort, and you become okay. You become competent at your job, which is great. But how many people just stop there? I would say probably not the people who are on this call right now, because they're not that interested in getting better. But this is like this for every profession. I don't know, think about driving, right? The average person learns a bit about driving, they pass their test, and for the rest of their life, they're kind of like, shmeh, I'm good, I got this. So what we want to do, if you want to do it, is climb this next hill to mastery. I'm going to butcher this spelling here. That means we need to get off the OK plateau and keep pushing and keep learning. And this is one of those, it's kind of a soft skill where I know for a lot of people, they kind of go, you know what, I'd love to take more medical training. You want to teach me how to do some fancy new things medically? That's awesome. But I kind of already know how to talk to people. I kind of already do a job at it, or at least a good enough job. And all I'm here today to talk to you guys about is to maybe give you a couple more things that you could be just a little bit more effective at. So what kind of stuff makes you go, oh my God, this person is just driving me up the wall, whether it's a patient, patient's family member, etc. Quite often it's when people are asking why, right? Why this? Why are you doing it this way? Why? At least as a police officer, we get that all the time. And I'm sure you get it as a medic as well. So what we need to do is be kind of good at explaining. There's a neat study that was done back in the 1970s. And what they did is they sent a young woman into a university where people are lined up at the photocopier. And they said, here's what you're going to say. We need you to cut in front of the line and say, hey, do you mind if I go in front of you? And we're going to record how many people let you in front. And it was 60% of people said, yeah, go ahead. So they said, we're gonna add something. You're gonna still say, hey, can I go in front of you? But we want you to add on to the end of that, because I'm in a rush. And what that did is it actually raised the amount of people that would let her in up to 94%. So they said, okay, let's change what you say just a touch more. You say, can I go in front of you because I need to make some copies? What? Doesn't everybody need to make copies in this line? It kind of makes no sense. And so how many people let this young lady in front of them? 93%, almost the same amount as when she said she was in a rush. And the magic word was because. See, we're all trained from the time we're little that when people say because, for a lot of people, we have this automatic trigger that goes, it's good enough. That's sufficient to describe what we're, to convince me. And we don't evaluate the because too much. So what we need to do as professionals is have that because kind of loaded up and ready to go and ready to explain to people what's going on. Because people want to know why you're doing stuff. And really, there's probably very little that you do as a medic that is so secret squirrel that you can't explain it to the patient or to their family. I'm sure there's stuff that you probably don't want to explain for certain reasons, but most of it, you can tell them what you're doing. You can tell them why you're doing it. And I think most medics do overall a pretty good job of this. However, what we do need to do is make sure that what we're saying and how we say it all matches up, right? The content and the delivery need to match, because if there's just a little hint of sarcasm in your voice, this cops get themselves into trouble all the time with this kind of stuff, where at the end of a traffic stop, the cliche thing to say to people is, have a nice day. But what do people read into that? They go, oh, he just gave me a ticket and then told me have a nice day. Of course I'm not having a nice day. And they read a bunch of things into it. So that's one of the things as police officers that we've kind of taken out of our vocabulary, because we know that it gets taken out of context with people. So think about the stuff that you say on a regular basis and maybe how that is taken out of context. How do you know? You're going to get feedback. And unfortunately, sometimes the feedback comes in the form of a complaint. The tone and how you say stuff to people, also super, super important. Especially now that everybody's, and you guys are still wearing masks, right? You got all this PPE on and really people can see your eyes and they can hear your voice. The tone of what we're saying really needs to match what we're saying, because people are going to tend to believe the tone. And if you just take a phrase like, I didn't say your baby was ugly, and you just change the tone a little bit, right? I didn't say your baby was ugly. Maybe somebody else said it. I didn't say your baby was ugly. Maybe you implied it in some other way. I didn't say your baby was ugly. I didn't say your baby was ugly. And I didn't say your baby was ugly, right? The same little phrase, yet it comes across in a completely different way. And this is where first responders and people in any kind of job where they're interacting with the public get into trouble, because what we are saying and how we are saying it all needs to match. Otherwise, people are going to read into stuff. And as an investigator, I've certainly, the patient or it's the patient's family or whoever is into this. And that's really what, if we can avoid that, that's awesome. And what we want to do is just make sure that we're marrying up how we're saying things so that we have the correct tone coming across. And really, the rest is body language, right? I don't know where this came from, but one of the leading theories on why we believe body language over the words that are said is because as a species, we didn't have language at first. We had body language and then slowly developed language. And so it's kind of in a deeper part of our brain. that if I say, Jackie, that's a beautiful jacket you have on today, right? You're believing the eye roll. And the complaints that I've seen, some of them come down to a freaking eye roll. That's what this person is perceiving, whether it actually happened or not. So we really got to be careful of that. Even with all the PPE stuff on, really, patients and other people are looking at your eyes. They can tell if you're smiling. They can tell if your smile is genuine because you got the little crow's feet on the side of your eyes instead of the, kind of smiling under your mask, but your eyes don't change at all. So we do need to be aware of our body language and how that comes across. And sometimes it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. So what we need is to get feedback from people to go, you know what, when you kind of stand like this, I know that you were just maybe a little bit cold or you didn't want to put your hands in your pockets, but the way that was coming across was a little bit judgy or a little bit standoffish or a little bit closed. And perhaps that's something that just needs to change, but we need to get that feedback and we need to be constantly evaluating, how am I coming across? How am I coming across to people? So let's talk for a second about, you know what? Oh, I haven't lost my place, but there's something I wanted to show you guys. And actually I'll show it to you now, or I'll let you listen to it now before we move on. I'm a Gen Xer and some of my favorite shows were from the early 80s. So I'm going to play a little bit of music here. And this is going to be the theme song from a TV show. And if you can guess what that is, I want you to throw it into the chat for me. So, and if you can't hear this, Jackie, just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Hard to hear.
Brian's got it. All right. I apologize if that was a little bit low. So yeah, that's the theme song from Chips, and Chips ran from 1977 to 1983. Super popular show about two motorcycle police officers in the California Highway Patrol. And Jackie, you're smiling like you remember that show. What do you remember about it? What stands out to you?
Eric Estrada.
Eric Estrada, right? Yeah, even the name sounds romantic. So he was one of the two guys on there, and he went on to do a bunch of Latin soap operas and stuff, and certainly a handsome fella. Really, the two officers in that show were so nice to everybody. This is before all the police corruption shows and stuff. And really, in 6 seasons, one of them took their weapon out of their holster one time. So it wasn't a shoot 'em up show. By today's standards, pretty tame. Like they would go to car accidents and lost kids and this kind of thing. But they were so likable because they were respectful and they did the right thing every time. And what happened is that bled over into real life, where the amount of complaints and the amount of lawsuits against the actual California Highway Patrol went way down because of that, because they had this effect of everybody knew that this was the face of the California Highway Patrol and they were good people. They were out there doing the right thing. So this is really, if you could create this for paramedics in Saskatchewan or paramedics in Canada or everywhere, wouldn't that be awesome? So part of this is just sort of contributing to how we do that. So let's talk about listening for a sec, because this is one of the places that I lose people. I lose cops for sure, because they go, yeah, I'm a good listener. Move on. We got this. And most of them don't got this. The problem with the talking stuff is that we've been doing it our whole lives, and people go, yeah, I got the talking stuff. Let's hear about something else. And really, we don't always do a great job, because the opposite of talking should be listening. But really, the opposite of talking quite often is just waiting to talk, right? We're listening to what they're saying, but we're formulating what we're going to say. And the moment there's a opportunity, we're in there with, well, here's your solution. Here's what you need to do with that, which is fine because, you know, as a medic, the idea is that you're coming up with solutions for this person's problem. However, there's something that we can do before we propose a solution, something that we can do that's going to increase our ability to be known, liked, and trusted. And that's just to actively listen. So I'm gonna share my screen for a sec here, and I'm gonna show you a quick video. Some of you might have seen it before, and it's gonna hopefully illustrate this well. Let's see here. I gotta share this, and I'm gonna share this quick video.
Are you okay, Dan?
Can you hear it?
Nope. Can't hear it or see it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I am so sorry.
When you did share screen, did you click on the
I
share
did.
sound?
I thought I did. Give me 1 second here. Screen sharing. Okay, let me stop this for a second. Let me try this one more time. And if that doesn't work, then yeah, we're in share sound. We're in optimize video clips. And just let me know if this plays or not. Jackie?
It's not playing. No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, there goes all of our rehearsing this morning. So that's super disappointing. Okay. Well, that's all right. That's all right. It's a video with a woman who's got a nail sticking out of her head. And she talks about how she doesn't know what's wrong and all of her sweaters are snagged and she's just got this achy, you know, and her boyfriend is going, yeah, well, you got a nail in your head. Like, I bet you if you got that thing out of there, and she's going, you're not even listening to what I'm saying. And he goes, okay, fine, go ahead. And she talks about, you know, the headaches she's having and she just doesn't understand what it is. And finally he goes, you know what, that must be hard. And she goes, it is, thank you. And then of course they lean in to kiss each other and she drives this nail even farther into her head. And really what it kind of illustrates is that sometimes the solution to us on the outside is very simple, right? And your job really as medics is to go around and solve problems and to tell people, hey, here's what you need to do. You're going to take this, you're going to stop doing this, you're going to start doing this, you're going to come with us to the hospital and whatever it is. And that's great. We rely on medics to be really competent at doing that. The extra little piece, however, is to just acknowledge what that person is going through. And it's not that hard. It's just having a little bit of empathy, just put yourself in that person's shoes. You don't need to have sympathy. You don't need to feel bad. You don't need to feel anything for them. We can't make you do that. But you can empathize. And all that means is putting yourself in that person's shoes and going, yeah, you know what, if I had this going on right now and I was in this person's position, I can understand how they'd feel that way. And just acknowledge that. You just go, hey, it sounds like X, you know, it sounds like you're having a really rough time with this. It sounds like you're in a lot of pain right now and we're going to do something to help you out. It looks like you're going through a really rough time with your addiction stuff right now. That's it. That's it. That's showing a little bit of empathy that you recognize the person in there. And for a lot of people, myself included, it doesn't come easy. It's a learned skill, but you have infinite amount of opportunity to practice this. You know, you're going through the lineup at the grocery store on the way home, and the person just checking your groceries through and they go, hey, seems like you're having a rough day. That's it. You've just empathized with them and gone, okay, this is probably what it's like. And now this person has a little, that little bit of connection, right? That little bit of, hey, I understand the human part of what's going on. And then of course you're going to get into everything else. But if we can start with that, man, that goes a long way to that know, like, and trust factor. The other thing we can do for listening, and again, people go, psh, I got this, is paraphrasing. And all that is making sure that you understood what the person said. Cops are the worst for this because they just want to jump in and just, I will tell you what your problem is and here's how we fix it, instead of going, okay, just let me make sure I understand what you're saying here, and just feed the words back to them. And if you're not right, that's fine. You know what? They'll correct you. They'll go, yeah, this is not how I'm feeling. It's more like this, or this is what happened instead. Great. At least you have some understanding happening. They know that you're listening. And it really doesn't take that much longer. And again, I hear it all the time where people just go, these stupid soft skills, whatever, I'm good at this, I've been doing this my whole life, etc. But when you really look at a conversation, if you really diagnose what happens, and as a police supervisor, I was able to do this because the Calgary Police Service and I think is still the only major police service in the country to go with body-worn cameras. So when there's a complaint, or even when an officer thinks they could have done something better, cool, let's go to the video. And now we can assess some of that tone and really how things went. And often cops aren't doing the greatest job. I think it would be the same with medics, that the way that we see ourselves doing it is not probably nearly as good. There's probably some room for improvement. That's all. So if we're looking at persuasion and how we persuade people and get them to do what we want to do, and really you are persuading people all day long. You're selling them, right? You're selling them on, hey, do you mind keeping your arm still while I try and get this IV in? You're selling the patient's family on, hey, do you mind stepping back a little bit and just give us a little bit of room to work here? You're selling on people going to the hospital instead of saying, I'm good, I'll just walk it off. Whatever it is, you're constantly selling something. And the most powerful element in persuading somebody is the quality of being what? Throw it into the chat. What do you think? What's the one quality? We touched on it already. Being heard. I like it. It's what we need is that other person to be heard. Honesty, genuineness. We're dancing around it here. Carrie Evanson, you win. Likability. Yeah, likability. So we talked a bit about, some people are saying compassion. Like, these are all great things, but ultimately, if the person likes you, they are more likely to go along with what you're saying. So how do we kind of, again, turn up that little bit of likability? Well, part of it is in the way we speak to people. There's a really interesting piece of research that was documented and talked about in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. And what they did is they looked at doctors being sued for malpractice. And they said, well, we got a group of doctors here who are being sued for malpractice all the time. We have another group that aren't. What's really going on? So they started to evaluate how they dealt with their patients. And it turns out the doctors that didn't get sued spent a little bit more time with their patients, but it wasn't really significant. What they did, though, is they audio recorded when the doctors were talking to patients. And they took 2 patients per doctor, 10 seconds of video times 2. So they had a grand total of 40 seconds of audio per doctor. That's all they had. And then they sent it through what's called content filtering. And it's basically just a way to take out the words that are being said, but it preserves tone, pitch, intonation, pace, all those things. So somebody can still listen to this and get the gist of what's going on, or the tone of it. And they let people listen to this. And what they found was that people were able to pick out who the doctors were who were getting sued and the ones that weren't. And it was all tone of voice that people did not like the most was dominance. If there was that domineering, I'm here to tell you what you need to do, that didn't go over well. And when they looked at how these people are being sued and when they're being sued, they had one of the top malpractice attorneys in the US who said, you know what, we have people that come into the office, they go, I want to sue my doctor, my surgeon, my specialist, whoever, because they botched this thing, it didn't go well. And they go, okay, let's look into it. And they look into it and they go, you know what? It's actually your primary care doctor who made the misdiagnosis first. And so we're going to have to not just sue the specialist, we're going to have to sue your primary care doctor as well. And they go, really? I've been with Dr. Messer-LePage for years, and she's lovely, and our whole family goes to her. And not once did they go, screw it, we're suing her. They go, you know what? Just drop it. We like her too much. So if we can be likable, I mean, they're not suing doctors who are screwing up. They're certainly less likely to complain about a medic who maybe did something that they didn't like along the way, whether it was some kind of malpractice or anything else that they might want to complain about. How do we become more likable? Well, first of all, likes. We like people who are like us. And we're just, our brains are hardwired that way. When we find somebody that has something in common, think about this. Think about going to a barbecue or a Christmas party or something. And it's, you know, maybe it's with your spouse and there's a bunch of different people from all over there. And then you find somebody else who's a medic. What happens? And maybe there's a few medics there. Who ends up all in a little pod, all talking shop together? Yeah, it's the same for every profession. It really is. So you've got something in common. You tend to like these people more. Think about going to a vacation somewhere. You know, you're outside of the country, you're traveling around, you bump into somebody else and you go, oh, you're Canadian? Hey, we're Canadian. Oh, you're from Saskatchewan? So are we. And all of a sudden you've got this connection there, and you instantly like this person a little bit more than if you had nothing in common with them. So the idea here is to be hunting for stuff that we have in common with the people that we interact with. It's a bit of an old sales technique for, you know, car salesmen to go have a look at the car that the person came in driving when they're looking for their new car. And they go, oh, I can see you got some golf clubs in the back seat. You know, hey, I'm into golf as well. And it doesn't need to be a cheesy kind of technique, but just look for something and chances are you'll find something, right? Whether it's, hey, your family's from Estevan. You know what? I had a cousin that lived there, or I've been through there, or, you know, this condition that you're going through. I actually had a family member go through something similar, and we don't need to disclose something crazy about ourselves, but just a little something so that this person goes, you know what? We have a little bit of connection here. We both like something the same. Yeah. And Dan says establishing rapport, right? All rapport is trust. And this is how we start to gain some trust, because otherwise we look at rapport as this kind of a, I don't know, it's like mist. Like, how do we develop it? Well, there's some actual techniques to it. And this is one of them, is just finding something that you have in common. It's a similar type of dog. It's you name it, look for it at your calls and you will be able to find it. And it's a bit like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you'll get. You'll know that some people are very good at this, right? Just automatically. They're the people, you know, you meet somebody at a gathering and they can find something right away. And other people, if they just don't think of it, it doesn't happen. So look for those similarities that we have with somebody else, with a patient's family, anybody that we're dealing with. Instantly, your likability starts to go up and your ability to persuade them starts to go up. I was going to show you a little clip. There's a little clip of, but I won't because I know it's not going to work now, but that's okay. Some of you probably be familiar with the movie Step Brothers. Well, there's a scene in there where, you know, these guys hate each other and then they start to discover that they've got some similarities. And they both start saying what their favorite dinosaur is at the same time, and Velociraptor, and they're both coming up with the same stuff. And they realize, hey, did we just become best friends? Right? Because they've got these similarities, and then they high five. And the high five is such a powerful nonverbal cue that we have that just gives us so many good feeling chemicals where we get instant connection with somebody. And I get there's going to be people that go, oh, we can't high five people. We got PPE on there, whatever. If we can look for an opportunity to give somebody a high five, we start to develop likability and rapport right away. So when you find that thing where you go, hey, same, yeah, little high five, right? Think about you're dealing with a patient and their kid comes up and maybe their child is asking questions and you go, hey, what video game are you playing? Oh, you're playing FIFA 2022. Yeah, I played that game too. What level? I don't know. What level are you on? There's probably no levels in there, but you know what I'm talking about. And you go, yeah, high five, buddy. That you're gaining instant rapport. So if you can look for opportunities to do that, and again, it doesn't need to be at work. You can start to do this at work when you're not dealing with patients, when you're dealing with other people in other social settings. Like, it works universally and it works really, really well. So look for those opportunities to high five. Use your name whenever you can and learn that other person's name, because that hearing our name spoken by somebody else, again, we get that hit of some good chemicals there that, hey, they're familiar with us. And I know over the last couple of years, certainly in the policing world, with police officers being doxxed, where people put their name online and they're worried about somebody showing up at their house, etc. There's a little less inclination to do that. However, if you're not worried about that, and I would say in most of the interactions that you have, you probably don't need to be worried about it too much. Giving somebody your first name is going to go a long way to establishing some rapport. So if they're not giving you their name, and I get it, you're going to need it for the PCR, for your patients, but even for family members that are there, rather than just going, hey, what's your name? Introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Dan. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. And then remember their name, which I get it can be hard to do. It's almost like a skill in and of itself, but then use their name. And that is going to start to develop this connection that is really, really powerful. Let's talk about reciprocity. So there's this, when we're talking about persuading people, some of the stuff that we do really doesn't even rely on liking. So I want you to, if some of you might be familiar with Amway, I think they're still around. They're probably not as big a huge a company as they used to be. But what they did is they had this cleaning set of cleaning products called the Amway Bug, right? So it's like a bag, and you've got shampoos in there, and you've got carpet cleaner and all kinds of different stuff. And I'm going to use Jackie as my test person here. So if I'm selling this, and I go to Jackie, we're friends, and I say, hey, Jackie, listen, I'm selling this stuff, but I don't expect you to buy any of it. Listen, I've got all these different cleaners and various things. I just want to get your opinion on it. Do you mind just hanging on to this for the next couple of weeks? Then I'll come pick it up. Use whatever you like. Again, not selling anything, but just I'd really love to get your opinion on it. Now, I leave this basket of all these cleaners at Jackie's place, and I come back in a couple of weeks, and I go, hey, what do you think? How much do you think that Jackie has used? Jackie, how much do you think you'd use out of that?
Probably tested all of it.
You would test all of it? Wow, you're a good friend. I would think a lot of people would just probably let this thing sit by the front door and then forget about it, or feel weird about the fact that, I may need to buy something now or whatever. But yeah, so then I come back to you in a couple of weeks and I go, hey, just want to get some of your feedback. And, if you liked any of it, it would be awesome if you go ahead and, if you're interested in buying some of it. Jackie, what do you feel now sort of obligated to do?
Well, I have to buy something now. So, and I've been here. I got conned. It was a bit of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt taken advantage of, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so some of those techniques like that are kind of, it doesn't make you feel good. But what it shows is that the person doesn't even need to like you to feel like they kind of owe you something now. And there's a bunch of really interesting stuff around this with the Hare Krishnas, which is an Eastern religious sect, and they would ask people for money, but they're of course banging on drums and wearing orange robes in San Francisco, and so of course people cross the street when they see those guys. So then they started going to the airports and dressing like regular people, regular travelers, and they would have a small rose, and they would just go up to people and kind of get close to them, and then just go and pin this on and say, oh, you know what, this is our gift to you. God bless. May you have a blessed day. And if you care to make a small donation, that would be wonderful. And what do people do? They go, you got to be kidding me. And then they reach in their pocket and they pull out $1 and give it to them. And then they walk away, and the researchers watch them walk away. They take the rose out and throw it in the garbage. They don't want this stupid thing. Well, then they watched as the Hare Krishnas would go to the garbage and take the roses back out and just do this over and over and over. And so it really demonstrated that we can have people feel a bit of an obligation to do something for us, even if they don't like us. And I had a colleague when working for the police, and he had pulled somebody over, and according to the guy's license plate, the driver was wanted on a Canada-wide warrant. So he goes up to talk to the driver. Turns out the driver's not the owner. It's the owner's brother driving this. And he goes, look, the vehicle's not insured, but I'd really love to know where your brother is. Tell you what, I'm not going to write you this ticket today. So I'm saving you $2,875 for this no insurance ticket. But I tell you what, here's my card. I do need to get a hold of your brother. If you could find out where he is, I'd love some help on that. So he leaves it alone. And 2 days later, he gets a voicemail with this guy saying, this is where my brother is. Now we're even. This guy didn't want to drop a dime on his own brother, but this police officer just saved him nearly $3,000, and he felt like he owed him something. So how do we kind of leverage that? And I'm saying leverage it for good. I'm not saying take advantage of people for any kind of sales, some smarmy sales type of thing, but the psychology behind it is the same, and it works even country to country and not just individual to individual. I saw a video on TikTok a couple of weeks ago, and it was this woman who's a flight attendant. And she said, if you want to get good service and get on the flight attendant's good side, give them just a small gift as you come in. And she recommended either a Starbucks gift card or some chocolate, something like that. She goes, nobody does that. You'll be totally remembered as this epic guest who did something nice. And I thought, hey, this is super easy. So I got a couple of caramel bars, and my wife and I we got back yesterday from Europe. We were on this like 8-hour flight to Amsterdam. And I said to the flight attendant who is helping us out, I said, hey, you know what? It's a long flight. Here's a bit of chocolate for you. And you know what? Here's a second one that you can share around with the crew. And she was like, oh, thank you so much. Didn't think anything more of it. But 10 minutes later, she comes walking out with a tray with 2 glass flutes with champagne and snacks for us. And we put these down, and everybody else is looking around at us like, oh, who are these 2 people? And why do they get all this special stuff? And then for the rest of the flight, there were staff coming up to our seats and going, hey, thank you so much for the chocolate. That was really nice. That whole thing cost me $1.50 from Dollarama to buy 2 chocolate bars. And, we've got that little bit of reciprocity going where we've done something kind and it's unsolicited. When I was a police officer, I've never smoked. I kind of got tired of people asking for smokes all the time. Like, I just thought it was kind of weird that they would ask a police officer, and maybe you guys have had the same experience as a medic where people ask you, like, have you got a smoke? Have you got a light? And I always thought, no, I don't smoke. And then I started to think, why don't I carry some smokes or at least a lighter with me? And I started to do that. And when people would ask, I would give it to them. Or if I knew they were a smoker, I would offer them a cigarette and a light. And that changed the interaction right away. I never had one time where somebody lit up their smoke and they went, see you later, stupid, and just left. It wasn't like that at all. People would stick around and chat because you've done one kind of small kind thing for that person. So as a medic, I'm sure there's a ton of opportunities for you to do that. And I don't have any kind of cookie cutter thing. But if you did a little bit of thinking on it, and if you looked for it at the next call that you go to just do some little unsolicited kind thing for the patient, for the patient's family, that is going to pay back in spades, and not just pay back for you at that moment. That's going to pay back in terms of maybe this person was going to make a complaint and they're not going to. Maybe their friend was had a bad interaction and they're going to step in and go, you know what, I actually had a medic who was really good. Or maybe it's just, we're putting it out into the universe. It's like the CHIPS thing where people just overall start to feel better about their interactions that they're having with medics. Small thing. Here's the final little thing that you can try. And that's called what we call in the Calgary Police, and I think it was coined here by one of our now superintendents, is the dust off. So that's just taking some time after maybe things didn't go that well to dust this person off and to go, hey, how you doing? Right? So imagine that the police come in. We need to take somebody down hard and crush them into the ground and use whatever force. We get them handcuffed, we get them searched into the back of the police car, and then take a breath, and then go back and we open up the door and we go, hey, how you doing? Like, how you feeling? And what's hurting on you? And explain, here's why I had to do what I do. Like, hey, you know what? I don't know you. Here's the information that we got on this call. And when I rolled up, you were standing there holding a baseball bat. And this is why we had to do what we did. And you know what we get most of the time, or I would get for sure doing this? Yeah, I get it. I understand where you're coming from, and it smooths things over, where that alone eliminated a lot of complaints, because even maybe this person had bad feelings about it, and we just take a little time to go, hey, that didn't work. That didn't go exactly the way I'd want it. Can we talk about this? And even doing that with maybe a patient's family and things didn't go well. I get that there's times where it's going to be an emergency, you need to go. But there's a lot of calls where seconds don't count, right? You can take a second to just go, let me just talk to this family member things weren't going well, and just go, hey, can we just redo this? Hey, my name's Dan, and let me explain a couple of things and let me hear what you have to say. And just taking that, 2 minutes can mean the difference between, a good interaction and a bad one. It can mean the difference between you going about your day, or weeks later, you getting an email from me saying that we need to have an interview because somebody's made a complaint. And ultimately, if all of this goes well, then I'm out of a job, and I'm okay with that. So we'll just kind of recap here. That's what we call the dust off. Let's get off that okay plateau, right? Pick one technique where you go, you know what, I'm going to try and use this. I'm going to do my best. This set of shifts, I am going to do this thing. I am going to find something similar with somebody at a call. Hey, we have this in common. Cool. That's it. That's all you need to do. Maybe it's using that empathic statement and just recognizing what they're going through and say, hey, seems like you're having a really rough go of this, or it seems like you're in a ton of pain from what's going on. Actively listen, do that one kind thing, learn people's names and use it, and just dust them off at the end. And if you do that, again, if I end up out of a job because of this, then it's worth my while. That's totally okay. And are words always going to work? No, of course not. So you can do the best job ever. Some people are still going to make complaints. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that part, Jackie, but it would I would say half of the complaints that I have seen have been external, where it's like eye rolling, it's tone of voice, it's those little communication behaviors that maybe that the medic isn't even doing terrible at, but for whatever reason, that person in the public is perceiving it that way, and it goes downhill from there.
Excellent. Kyle, I won't steal your opportunity, but I just want to say my favorite thing is dusting off the negativity. Get rid of it. So, and I am going to take chocolate bars on my next flight. Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so I see Kathy here says I toss little treats in my backpack and give them out where appropriate. Cool, little toys. Yeah, we used to have a program in the police where we would get donated teddy bears and stuff, and somebody would package them into plastic and have them in the back of police cars and stuff. And then for some reason they got rid of that. But that was a really cool thing. And again, it's totally unsolicited. It's a very easy, kind thing to do. And some of those people are going to remember that forever. Yeah, so I guess we've got a little bit of time here for some Q&A. If anybody has questions that they want to pop into the chat, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, now, Jackie, we're going to be 30 minutes ahead of schedule.
Jackie, the chocolate bar trick works at council meetings too, just in case you're wondering. So, you know, while we wait for some questions, Dan, if any, just wanted to say thank you for your message. Certainly coming from yourself, who's had a lot of experience on the street front line with police. Certainly seeing individuals perhaps even worse than we do many times. Your message is not falling on deaf ears, I hope. I think what you had to say to motivate and kind of give us some perspective to think about. These are tougher times than perhaps many of us are used to, and trying to navigate, as I said earlier, just such a degree of uncertainty, what's happening going forward, and the society's fatigue over COVID and so many other things. We thank you for your message, and really lightheartedness too, and how you delivered that. So again, thank you on behalf of council and the college, and I'll let many others share the same sentiments in the chat for a few more minutes.
No, thanks. And yeah, I think everybody's tired. And the one thing that I hear as well from medics is that they're burned out, and it's the public that needs to be, you know, have a little bit more empathy and a little more compassion with what they're going through. And I agree. I wish that was the case. Unfortunately, we can't do that, right? We have this little sphere of control, and we can only control really ourselves. So if we can do our part, you know, hopefully this thing will get turned around. But it's been a really rough couple of years for first responders everywhere. And I don't think it hurts to have, you know, to work just round off our edges on some of those little interpersonal skills is going to pay off. And you know what? This stuff works not just at work, it works with everybody. Like I said, council meetings, wherever else. Yeah, you don't have to wait for work to look for opportunities to try stuff out.
And, you know, we don't have to change the world all at once, one patient at a time, one interaction at a time. You know, come to work, set the tone, bring the weather. You know, one interaction at a time is all we need to do, and be remembered. As much as we want to change the challenges we have in the hospital with offload delays, and, you know, how nice the public should be to us, at the end of it all, one interaction at a time can truly make a difference to the individual. And it's less stress, not trying to change everything at once.
Yeah, for sure. One, you know, there's a really great quote that I like, and I don't know if it's nautical or aeronautical, but it's that an inch on the nose equals a mile on the horizon. So it's not about trying to make some giant change. It's just about making incremental change, and where we end up over time is in a far better place. Glenn, you say, I wish more could hear my message. Well, that's thank you so much. I'd love the opportunity to come out there and run some in-person classes where we can get into deep into this kind of stuff, but we'll see how that goes. So it was a really good opportunity to be here and talking with everybody.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's awesome, Jackie. Well, I'll turn it over to you, and certainly, if anybody wants to get a hold of me to they got questions or comments or criticism or whatever you got, that's great. Certainly, these guys can help you out in getting a hold of me. So thanks very much, guys, for the opportunity, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, well, that was a great message, and hopefully everybody had a chance to take something away from that. There's a number of things that we can look back and take with us forward. So we'll move into our last speaker. Jackie, is that okay?
Yep, that's good.
Good to move forward. Okay. To end us off for the day, we have our very own. Oh, 1 second.
Oh.
Nope, all good, all good.
Okay.
Our very own executive director and registrar for the college, Jackie Messer-LePage. If you don't know who she is, I'm not sure why you're here, because by now you should know who Jackie is. And what's a little known fact, in case some people didn't know, in addition to her tireless dedication with the college, she's delivered a number of programs with the University of Regina since 2007, often called to speak on topics relating to leadership, resilience, conflict resolution, and personal growth, and instills that in council as well, any opportunity she can, which is greatly appreciated. Jackie believes that personal power comes from reflection and commitment to approach. In her presentation today, she'll provide a brief overview of the 6 stages of power and how we can move between them through deliberate efforts towards greater self-reflection and resilience. So I, again, will hand it off to Jackie to leave us with a great message for the day.
Thanks very much, Kyle. And thanks again, Dan, for your message. I have written myself some notes. So I would just like to take a short opportunity to talk to you a little bit about personal power, because our feelings around power have a lot to do with the frustration. Sometimes when we're bumping up against situations that are beyond our control, a lot of our frustration comes from feeling powerless. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a presentation, and I have the chat open as well. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot them into the chat, and I'll try and speak to them as we go. So most people, when they describe personal power, they use words like knowledge or status or hierarchy, income, or the amount of stuff you have. And personal power really can make a difference in how you feel or perceive the stressors that come into your life. That's why looking at your personal power is so important when you're dealing with a situation that is somewhat unrelenting, which is the current state of affairs in healthcare. Knowledge isn't the only form of power, and toxic power exists, and it can be charming. Many people, like myself, like to believe that the world is really orderly and predictable, and that karma prevails. It's called a just world perspective. And human beings like to believe in this just world perspective because it's predictable and comprehensible. And if it's predictable, we can potentially control it. So if you're like me, you might believe that if you follow all the rules, you'll be all right. And that people that don't follow the rules, well, they're probably going to falter or fail. It's the get what you deserve perspective. And in this case, it often blames the victim. So if you think about the impact of this perspective on society, then it really can shift your thinking, because then people who are underprivileged or poor must have done something to deserve it. And so you can see where this logic is really flawed. So does the just world principle or philosophy set us up for failure? Well, I would argue that it probably does, but we're all a little bit guilty of it. In terms of yourself, you want to challenge that just world hypothesis, that the world isn't just and it isn't always fair. And sometimes people will use power in ways to power over you or in ways that are corrupt. And you need to be able to recognize it and speak up and do something about it. So I'm going to describe Janet Hagberg's model of personal power, and it involves 6 types of power that are commonly used by leaders. Each person is involved in one stage of power at some point in their lives, and you can experience the stages more than once. So this particular model is used by leaders as a self-reflection tool to understand and develop their own skills. Ms. Hagberg described 6 stages, starting with powerlessness. And so when you think about powerlessness, what typically comes to mind? Well, I can think about the number of jobs I've had in my career, and going into a new organization, knowing nobody, or being totally dependent on other people. So even if you're like a restricted paramedic and you're starting work, you feel sometimes somewhat powerless, just by virtue of the fact that you are dependent on somebody else to kind of validate the actions you're taking. And people who feel powerless tend to feel that they have no external power or limited external power and virtually no internal power. Power by association is the power that we get by using the power that other people have. So as we get to know people and gain their respect and trust, we can leverage their power by asking them to do things for us, or asking them to introduce us to people that can help make a better connection for us. So my question to those of you who are in leadership roles is your power by association positive? Because if it's probably less than positive, then you need to think about what kind of power am I demonstrating. Power by achievement is the power that we gain through acquisition, and achievement leads to achievement. So if you do well at work, you get promoted. And so this kind of power can be very, very enticing, because the more you have, the more you want, and the more you typically get. Power by reflection is a curious reversal of depending on other people for power. We gain power through internal reflection. So that's the power that really is based on your integrity. And people who reach this power by reflection phase typically are starting to let go of ego. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. Power by purpose is a stage where people are driven by purpose, and their power comes from within. So many of you feel this power already because you've chosen careers that involve service and service to others. And usually it's based on an intrinsic need to do good work. And you'll see this in great leaders. They show this purpose in the speeches they deliver and the symbolic actions they take. And they succeed because they believe in a greater purpose beyond themselves. They're visionary and self-accepting, and usually humble and spiritual. And the last phase of power is power by wisdom, and that's the Gestalt principles. So people feel a deep connection to the broader universe, and they may feel like they're content and they're balanced, and they don't think about power at all. And that's what makes it so powerful, is that lack of concentration on achievement or symbols. So I'm just going to dive into each of these a little bit deeper. So when people are faced with a crisis of self-esteem or skills, or both, they may feel powerless. And you may have experienced this over the last couple of years, where you're being pushed to the edge. I've heard lots about folks feeling incredibly burned out. And sometimes that makes us self-sabotage. We don't intentionally fail, but we may not stretch ourselves because we don't want to fail. So examples of that might be, I'm not going to apply for that job because if I don't apply, then I can't fail. And really, you're working in an environment where you're having to balance the reality of a political environment with the need to maintain your own dignity and power. And it's challenging. Better men and women than I have experienced the same thing. Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple. Good performance doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to maintain a position of power, nor does poor performance mean that you're going to lose your job. And as a matter of fact, sometimes outstanding performance can even hurt you. because people won't want to let you go if you're really good at what you do. What's important to remember is that relationships matter. And especially when you're feeling powerless, relationships are very important. It's also important to remember that when you see corrupt power, you need to have a plan for how to engage corrupt power. So if I was to ask you what holds people back, when I've asked this question in the past, it's usually fear. People are afraid to fail. They're afraid to experience disappointment or somebody fighting back. And so you need to think about, if you're feeling powerless, what's preventing you from moving forward? And if it is fear, what's driving that fear? Is it shame or guilt? What exactly is the emotion attached to that? In power by association, that really is when you're you rely on it when you're new to an organization. So typically you're learning the ropes and the corporate culture, and you're dependent on other people to help you navigate this new place. In power by association, we use power that other people have. So what could go wrong with this? Well, the dark side of this is you can sometimes present as a victim, or you can be so afraid to make a mistake that you get involved in framing people or shaming people or blaming. We see a lot of blaming. So how can you tell if somebody's living in that power by association piece? Well, usually you start seeing it as evidenced in I have to have the best of everything, or the nicest car, or the biggest house, or it's really about stuff at this stage of the power cycle. And people get stuck here when they lack confidence, or they feel like they have a need for security. And you may remember there was a theory of hierarchy developed by Maslow in the 50s that talked about, health and safety needs, that people had a hierarchy of security needs throughout their lifetimes. And at the very bottom rung is that health and safety need, and you can't progress to that whole self-reflection, self-actualization until you get those basic needs met. So sometimes it's about security. If you're the boss, and again, you're providing this association, is your association positive? Are people seeing your power demonstrated in a way that they would want to emulate and reproduce? The power by achievement phase is really the power we gain ourselves. It's through accomplishment. This is the dynamo stage. This is when you're in control, but your ego plays a big role here. You may be competitive, and you may be realistic or not realistic. And sometimes you are very ambitious. And so when you're at this stage, sometimes people will demonstrate it by being workaholics, or never having your phone off, always being on for work. And there are employers that actually expect that. When I worked for government, I remember it was quite normal to be expected to work till 2:30 or 3 in the morning, depending on what was going on. That's not normal. That's not good corporate culture. And so if you think about power by achievement, and if your role is dependent on demonstrating your value to an organization, what happens when it's taken from you? So if you think in terms of office staff, so for us, if the only sense of power we have is based on the status we have in the office, when we move to working from home, some people experience significant loss with that. There are other approaches that or other situations where this can be really apparent, and that I'll give you an example. Simon Sinek, who is a leadership guru, speaks often about leadership and power. And in one of his presentations, he talked about the fact that he had a CEO once that he was coaching, and the CEO went to do a presentation, and he was given first class treatment, business class flights. And when he arrived, they offered him a cup of coffee right away, and all was good. He did his presentation. The next year, he was invited back, but this time he was retired. So he flew himself there. He got there. And he asked for a cup of coffee, and the person pointed him to the coffee maker and said, just over there. And he poured his coffee in a styrofoam cup. And the importance of this was he recognized that his status and achievement was for the role, not for him. All he really deserved was that styrofoam cup. So at the end of the day, and I'm going to talk about this, you're not your role. You are the human being and all the essence that you bring to the job. So getting stuck in this spot happens because we don't necessarily want to let go of our ego. And so getting unstuck has to do with learning to self-reflect and trying new things and stretching and taking risks and getting support from people who are at a different level in the stages. The next piece, so I've just explained that the first 3 stages are extrinsically focused. So they're influenced by circumstances, sometimes beyond your control. And really, egos don't get stuck, but humans seeking meaning can. So you need stages 1, 2, and 3 to get you to a point where you can actually start reflecting on what's important to you in terms of power. When you get to power by reflection, you really have made a switch to being more internal than external and still feeling powerful about it. You're probably really confident and reflective, and you think a lot about how you want to be at work. How do you want to interact with patients? What kinds of behaviors do you want to represent or demonstrate? You may be a mentor to somebody and a true leader. So you gain more power through your internal reflection than you do actually externally. And more often than not, people are going to really respect you. And that strength draws more people to you. And they think about, as they're thinking about power by association. So paradoxically, as you let go of your ego, you gain more power. And can you get stuck here? Yeah, you can still have ego, and ego comes and bites us when we least expect it. And, sometimes we succumb to our egos. And so getting unstuck involves experiencing that loss of ego, being okay with letting it go, and being okay with silence and internal thoughts, and not dismissing your internal thoughts. Power by purpose. Well, this isn't transactional anymore. This is about a deeper sense of purpose. And the reason it's important to think about this is because some days work isn't going to give you enough of a sense of purpose. Just going through the motions of doing the technical skills isn't enough to make you feel like you're feeling like you're doing good things, that you're being valued. And the important piece here is that when you can learn to make yourself feel valued, you're no longer relying on external sources to make you feel strong and feel competent, then you're more likely to be resilient when the day goes poorly or the situation gets more difficult. So when you're at this stage, you tend to trust in yourself more than you trust the rules. And people at stage 5 are really different internally and externally than they were previously. You'll have a life purpose that extends beyond yourself. And that's really a result of the thinking that goes on stage 4, which is the power by reflection. Stage 5 is not ego oriented. And usually people that are here are calmer, they're humble, they're visionary, and they're generous in empowering others. It's okay to let other people share the credit. It's okay to give other people the opportunities because it isn't that important to you anymore. Can you get stuck here? Yeah, you can. Trying to understand the whole universe is a monumentous task, and it's overwhelming. Or sometimes you'll have days when you have no faith and in anything. And so you may get stuck. Really, the solution lies within yourself, and it can't be predetermined because it's really up to you. Moving to stage 6, power by wisdom, is a whole other cat. And sometimes we might get glimpses of power by wisdom, but for the most part, most of us won't live here all the time. And when you get to this point, you really are considered the sage, you know, the wise person. You've discovered at this point that there's no learning and power without reflection, that you have a really strong capacity to tolerate conflict. So you've built some resilience. You're really empathetic. You understand empathy, but you're also able to check your empathy against what's real and what are the reality requirements. So people that are at stage 6 are typically okay with acknowledging that they're powerless. They feel like it's okay. They're quiet in service. They're not afraid of death, and they're usually very ethical. So people, if you think about people who are at this stage, you're probably looking at people like Mother Teresa, Gandhi, and people in your own organizations that probably demonstrate these qualities every day, and don't think twice about whether or not they have power, because it doesn't matter to them. So interestingly enough, when you get to this point, you may not recognize you're at this point because it doesn't matter. And so stages 4, 5, and 6, stages 4, 5, and 6 are all about intrinsic power. And that's where the rubber hits the road in all reality. As you face your obstacles, you're going to progress through these stages, and you may go backwards and forwards. And at some point, life is going to place you in a situation where you can't fix or control the circumstances. And that's where transformation really happens. And so what I tell folks is that it's important to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. As human beings, we tend to look for ways to satisfy discomfort, to alleviate discomfort. And realistically, we need to be okay with the feeling of discomfort, because only by feeling it and allowing it to pass do you ever realize that you can make it to the other side without a whole lot of turmoil. So in this particular model, it's considered the wall, and this is an ego wall, which requires you to really think about what you do and don't have control over, and embrace transformation. And sometimes it's triggered by disappointment or a loss or a dream. And this is where your leadership is really forged. So if you consider a moment that you dread or fear or resist, and reframe it as, this moment is happening for me, not to me, it can be helpful. And it's not as simple. I'm not naive enough to recognize that you can just mind over matter your problems away, but your mind has a lot to do with establishing coping strategies for when circumstances become very difficult. Ego itself can rob you of personal power, and I've talked about that briefly in the last couple of slides. Power is about feeding the soul. And so don't attach yourself to a person or a place or an organization. Attach yourself to a mission or a calling. And it really helps, because what will happen is when the organization disappoints you, or the culture of the organization isn't aligning very well with you on a particular day, you still have all the internal power and value that you know you have, and all those external factors are somewhat less important to you. So how do you feed the soul? Well, you think about what attachments you have in your life, and what really is important to you. What are you most proud of? And what do you want other people to appreciate about you? If you had to think about what qualities you bring to the table, what do you want other people to think? And what do you want them to know? So at this point, I want to talk a little bit about burnout, because I've heard that word so many times in the last couple of years, and it's sad. And it's frustrating for everybody, and nobody wants to feel burned out, but at some point it may happen. You may be exhausted by the excessive demands on your physical demands, your emotional demands in your workplace or even at home. And so lots of times people who are burned out may demonstrate behaviors like depersonalization of work, segmenting. I'm not going to think about that. And men typically manifest there. You may not feel like you're making any headway. You're not feeling accomplished, or you may feel emotionally exhausted, and not to be gender biased, but women tend to lean that way. Anything that has ongoing demands or unyielding demands in any setting can cause burnout. And what it is, as you well know, is an erosion of your coping skills and your ability to adapt to chronic stressors. Causes of workplace burnout, well, workload, perceived lack of control or power, which is why I started with that. Lack of recognition or reward, poor relationships, lack of fairness, or a values mismatch with your organization. In general, we're talking about poor corporate hygiene, and the pandemic only served to amplify existing issues that predated the pandemic. Some people don't know that they're burning out. Some people turn toward the difficult feelings and identify them, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the challenge with burnout is it can overlap with other experiences like depression, anxiety, rage, or repressed rage. And it can leave you feeling overwhelmed and exhausted by everything and still feeling like you're not doing enough. So when people are burned out, they usually send their body to work, but their minds are somewhere else, thinking about being somewhere else. So stress is a very commonly used word that it can be overused, but it's defined as like your body's response or a non-specific response to any demand for change. And, you know, most of us view stress as unpleasant. And so it becomes synonymous with distress and illness. And we all know that stress over a period of time can cause long-standing impacts. But realistically, it's really just a response by our body to things it sees as potentially harmful. Hans Selye was considered the father of stress research, and he said that the absence of stress is death. So that life basically stress is embedded in all aspects of life. In terms of disease, we know that our ability to cope and adapt can impact whether or not we have stress-related disorders like heart attacks and ulcers. We don't jump up and down just because a stressor is diminished for a period of time. Sometimes those stressors go on and on and on. And if you're a parent with young children, you know that the stress of getting your kids to daycare is sometimes you're happy when you get there, but then it's not a total release of that stress because it's going to happen again tomorrow. We know about fight or flight. And we know that there's a physiological response that happens when you're experiencing stress. You know that the blood pools to your core. And so you even lose dexterity in your fingers, your vision changes. So there are distinct physiological things that happen to you when you're under stress. And so in your roles, you're under constant stress. And believe it or not, it can take up to 60 minutes for your body to recover to its pre-arousal state when it's been triggered. So this whole area of stress is challenging when you're working in a profession that is really based on stressful moments. Your body naturally kicks into fight or flight. You have some resistance, and then after everything ends, you have this exhaustion phase. So what you would want to do in these kinds of circumstances is pay attention to how you feel, because only then can you actually address exactly what your feelings are. So life stressors, well, we know what they are. They're classic. People have talked about them for years. The beauty of this is that your brain has neuroplasticity. So you can create new pathways and on how your mind chooses to view a stressor. You can even enlarge part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, to help you think more clearly about whether these stressors are manageable or not. And the good news is, for people who, like me at my age, we get new brain cells every day, even at this age. And so you have the ability to change the way your brain views stressors. Neuroplasticity of the brain means that you can redirect your thoughts to build more present focused and hopeful pathways. And so when you think about the stressors in your life, it's very important to identify what specifically the triggers are. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there are two common types of stress, acute and episodic. Acute stress usually happens, or sorry, acute and chronic. Acute stress is really most common, happens intermittently in response to a traumatic event, and it can last for up to a month. Acute episodic is when that happens continuously and there's no downtime in between. And that is extremely risky because what happens is your body then starts adapting to this chronic state of stress, and that becomes normal. So chronic stress may be continuous. It can be based on relationships or finances or workplace, PPE, for example, and it can leave you feeling frustrated and despondent and helpless. And so over time, it erodes your ability to cope. And so it becomes very, very important to be able to identify when you're facing chronic stressors, what your options are to do something about it. Another piece that I'll just, mention here is that appearances can be deceiving. And so knowing whether it's stress or whether it's actually something physically wrong is important, and being able to differentiate between the two. Because, memory changes or inability to focus or poor judgment may be something other than just stress or depression. So it's important to medically rule out. I remember my dad, when he practiced as a psychiatrist, he would say, you're treating a whole person, you're not treating a symptom. And so when you're feeling a certain way, you want to make sure that there isn't something else feeding that symptom. Strategies for managing workplace stress. Well, the first one I want to talk about is tracking. Tracking your stress triggers and responses can be done in a number of different ways, including journaling or simply making a notation in your day planner, or sometimes I make a notation in my phone. It's important to recognize what triggers you and how long did it last. So was it just somebody saying something to you or giving you the stink eye? Or, was it something that somebody else experienced that you're just feeling empathy about? So is the stressor yours, or is the stress more vicarious? How overwhelming was it? What was the intensity of it? Is it just an irritant, or is it something overwhelming? And what was your physical response? Did you feel like you just wanted to run screaming from the room? Did you get angry? What was your physical response? And your emotional response, what was the emotion? And Brené Brown has written a really great book called Atlas of the Heart that talks about the importance of describing emotion properly. Because what happens when you describe an emotion in a certain way, your brain has neural pathways that have been built over your lifetime to respond in a certain way. And so if you describe fear, your brain kicks in with that fear pathway. If you describe uncomfortable, then your brain will move in that trajectory. So describing your emotional response, she did extensive research with tens of thousands of people. And what she found was that if you describe your emotional response incorrectly, your body will respond anyway in that manner. So your emotional response, being able to tag a specific word to what that emotion is important. And then think about how you wish you'd responded. So sometimes the mouth engages before the brain. We respond in a way that we're not particularly happy or proud of. And so you need to think about how I wish I had responded. And then develop a strategy for how do you remind yourself when you're in the worst situation that you want to stay true to your behavior, the behavior you're committing to. Building positive approaches really is, once you know what your triggers are and how you typically respond, you can develop healthy coping strategies. And I don't need to tell you folks that, balance is important. It's hard when everybody is requiring everything of you to create balance in your life. Keeping a physical activity journal or keeping some physical activity in your life is important. Keeping track of the food you're eating might be important if you're eating on the run. And when I worked in healthcare, we were always eating on the run. And so, you know, making sure that you're eating well and taking breaks and healthy approaches to dealing with difficult environments. Articulating boundaries is extraordinarily important. And even though we all know inside what our limitations are, sometimes we're not comfortable telling people what they are. There are respectful ways, and Dan talked about some of them. There are respectful ways to tell people that, you know, I know that's what you want, but that isn't what I can give you. But you need to start by knowing what your limits are. So understanding what your beliefs and values are, where's your line in the sand? And if your line in the sand is when I leave work at 6 o'clock, I'm not going to answer my phone, then you need to make sure you hold true to that. And so it's important to not necessarily think about laying out a whole list of complaints with other people, but develop an effective mechanism or plan for dealing with the stressors that you've identified. And so when I'm thinking about boundaries, I can think about situations where somebody says, well, can you work another shift? Well, I'd like to be able to say yes, but I've already worked a 12-hour shift, and I think it wouldn't be safe for me to do so. So recognizing that you have the ability to articulate boundaries. People may still breach the boundaries, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but you owe it to yourself to articulate them well. Recharging, we're not robots that can simply plug in and shut down. So your mind processes even when you're asleep. So for this reason, you need to develop strategies to deal with both external stressors and those that cycle through your brain at night. Taking time to recover is super important in dealing with chronic stressors. So physical disconnection is one of the ways you can do that. And I remember, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I remember when I worked paying insurance disability claims, I had a caseload that was large. It was about 700 files. And every night I would have to close the drawer at work. It was a physical action that reminded me that I'm not at work anymore, because otherwise I just ruminated all night long about whose file did I need to see tomorrow. Starting with small strategies is important, and some people use gratitude as a mechanism of reminding themselves of how to recharge. Gratitude and meditation, breathing, all of those kinds of mindfulness activities can help to recharge your batteries. And then prepare for violations. Humans being what they are, they're going to slip up and they're going to breach your boundaries, and have a plan for those times when you're facing your stressor again. It's going to be human nature that you're going to bump up against violations by patients who are going to cross lines, but you need to stay true to what your behavioral expectations are for yourself. What are you going for when you're saying the things you're saying? What are you going for in terms of your power needs and your ego? So there are a number of approaches to burnout, tactical or strategic. I'm going to talk about each one just briefly. So cognitive flexibility is really something that we can all learn to do. It's really about learning to calm the area of your brain responsible for all the trouble, the amygdala. And so the amygdala is that piece of your brain that starts to cascade the physiological changes when your body's triggered. And so how can you change these brain responses? Well, some of it is viewing your stressors differently, as challenges rather than threats that can't be managed. Another important area of the brain is that prefrontal cortex, where you have all your higher level thinking. So, you know, you probably remember this from your physiology class, but thought processes go through the amygdala and then to the prefrontal cortex. So while you're busy feeling an emotion, you can't be very logical. And so when somebody pushes your buttons at work, you're emotional, you're thinking and feeling an emotion. So what you want to do is you want to think about the emotion, label it correctly, allow it to pass, and then move into a problem solving, more higher thinking level of strategy. So Cognitive flexibility, well, this is a list of kind of a process that you can follow to assess the stressors that you're facing. So just reframing it. What are the risks? What do you have to lose? How much can you control? And so on and so forth. So this is an approach that takes practice. Nothing good happens without practice, I'm afraid. And it doesn't have to be this rigorous. This is very, very contrived, but you can do it in whatever mechanism you want. What it's designed to do is encouraging you to stop and think before you act. And then behavioral coping. You know, we know that enough sleep is a luxury. Do you get breaks? You might not get breaks. So how are you going to care for yourself when you don't get breaks? What's your strategy? And only you can see opportunities to meet these needs. And you might have to do it by deliberate effort, right? One of the last things I want to talk about is distortions. So distortions are habitual ways of thinking that tend to impact our approach. And so these distortions, there are 12 of them. And the good news is that there are only a handful that are linked to stress. But really, these are things that we normally do as human beings. We get fixated on flaws, like, you know, oh, my hair looks terrible today, or, oh, I'm really not that smart, I forgot to start that IV. Jumping to conclusions that, you know, oh yeah, I know what that is. I don't need to ask. All or nothing thinking, I suck, you know, and I've heard this, like, I just suck, forget it, I'm out of here. So these types of distortions really are obviously, for obvious reasons, not helpful, but they're also misleading. And so recognize when you're looking at a situation and you're engaging one of these distortions, that probably you need to rethink whether or not this is real or whether this is just my perception. And if you think it's real, you need to ask questions about it. Don't be afraid to ask somebody, was it your intention to offend me? That felt offensive. Or, you know, I know you think that's what I said, but that isn't what I said. So make sure you validate the information you're receiving and determine whether your distortions are in fact distortions or whether they're actually real. And then thinking about identifying and replacing that thought process. And really, this has a lot to do with your own approach and your thinking. And it isn't mind over matter. It takes practice. It takes practice to view the world from a different lens when you're used to viewing it in a certain way, but it can be done. So what shapes resilience? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is adversity. Nobody can test their capacity to bounce back unless they've experienced some adversity. And so for folks that tell me they've never experienced conflict or they've never had difficult challenges, then I can't tell them whether they're going to be resilient or not. Life is full of challenges, and you get to kind of determine how you're going to move forward. So, you know, recognize when your thought patterns are toxic. Don't allow the mental videos that you're playing to come true. And acknowledge the feelings that you're feeling. It's okay to feel like really ticked off, and it's okay to be angry about a situation. Let that emotion pass, feel it, be uncomfortable, let it go, and then move on to problem solving. So at most times your mind is telling you something, and you need to verify whether it's true or not true, because the world isn't always as distorted as we might see, and it isn't always a just world. Okay, so I'm just going to say that this presentation is dedicated to all of you. This year, I lost my niece about 6 weeks ago. She was a healthcare professional, and she took her own life, and we're still struggling with it. But I know that this time in life is incredibly difficult, but you need to know that we appreciate what you're doing, that society appreciates what you're doing, and that there are other approaches beyond ending your circumstance. So I'm just going to show you this more uplifting. Oh, thank you for that. I'm going to show you this more uplifting video. It's beautiful. So have a listen.
Maybe the hardest part is if if you teach, you have to live your teaching. You can't say you do not as I do, but do as I say. No. You have to say, I'm doing my best to live what I teach. I have a painting by Phoebe of a group that she calls Sister Suki's Funeral. And all the women, there are about 9 women, and they all look like women in my grandmother's prayer meeting group. So whenever I'm obliged to do something, I take that painting and I look at that painting. There's an empty chair. And I think, now, what would Grandma do? What would she say? I can almost hear her voice say, now, sister, you know what's right. Just do right. You don't really have to ask anybody. The truth is, right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul. It brings you the kind of protection that bodyguards can't give you. Try to be all you can be, to be the best human being you can be. Try to be that in your church, in your temple. Try to be that in your classroom. Do it because it is right to do. You see, people will know you, and they will add their prayers to your life. They'll wish you well. I think if your name is mentioned and people say, oh, hell, oh, damn, I think you're doing something wrong. But if your name is mentioned and people say, oh, she's so sweet, he's so nice, oh, I love, oh, God bless her. There you are. So try to live your life in a way that you will not regret years of useless virtue and inertia and timidity. Take up the battle. Take it up. It's yours. This is your life. This is your world. I'll be leaving it long before you under the ordinary set of circumstances. You make your own choices. You can decide life isn't worth living. And that would be the worst thing you can do. How do you know? So far. Try it. See. So pick it up. Pick up the battle and make it a better world. Just where you are. Yes. And it can be better, and it must be better. But it is up to us.
Okay, so that's all she wrote. So I will stop screen sharing at this point and turn it back, and thank you for your comments. Any questions at all? No? Okay, so I will turn this back to Kyle to just say his last little bit.
Thank you, Jackie, for the presentation and for sharing a bit of your story. And again, along with Dan and his perspective on what he's shared. Thank you, Dan, for that again. As well as Marilee for joining us today and making sure that we don't do anything offside. Colette for helping us with the polling and setting up all the technical aspects of today. Louise, Jen, and the rest of council, past and our new council. We thank you for all the dedication and time you've put in, and we've asked a lot of you in the last couple of years without question, and we've always been able to move forward through whatever was in front of us. So got a strong team at college, and feel free to reach out and ask our new president any and all questions you may wish, and he'll be happy to bring that to council. So I'll leave you with 2 last words of parting words before we're done for the day. And one of the things that is often is often said and reminded within many of the organizations I've spent time with is, especially in paramedicine, is very applicable. Patients and people we interact with will often forget what you might have said and may even forget what you did for them, but they will always carry with them how you made them feel. And in today's world, that seems very relevant because that's what we leave our patients with is how we made them feel. It's not the medications we gave. It's not the service we provided. It's the how we made them feel. And certainly, in addition, it wouldn't be right not to depart the day with the old adage for May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And I will
Oh my
leave you
God.
because
You're so funny. Toodaloo. Thanks, everybody. I think our leader is leaving. Awesome.
have a good day, everybody. And we will see you same time, maybe same date next year. We'll see.
Same date. Toodaloo. Thanks for coming
All
along.
right. Take care, everyone.
Should stop recording.